All right. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Rebecca Dolan. I am a employee for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, and I generally cover compliance and enforcement. And if you are not sure where you are in the TURA reporting spring training. Our goal is that the training is going to run until 1, hopefully. We stick to that timeline, and we've got quite a few things for everybody. So I'm just going to get started. All right. If you cannot see my slides, please speak up. Okay. So just to let everybody know, Otter, or the EEA accessibility tool, will be in use for this meeting. It has been approved by Human Resources, IT, and Legal to support user accessibility. Approved Otter instances will be labeled as EEA accessibility tool to differentiate them from unapproved software intended for personal use. If you have any questions or concerns about the use of Otter, please refrain from addressing them during this meeting. Instead, direct your inquiries to DEI office at eeadiversity@mass.gov. So Zoom basics. This meeting will be recorded. I mentioned that already, but I've already started the recording. You can actually see that it's recorded on your bar across the bottom. So let's talk about sound. Who can hear me? Attendees were muted upon joining the meetings, and we do ask that you remain muted during the presentations, if at all possible. I know Pam will probably ask you to unmute during her presentation, but please try to be respectful to each of the speakers. If you have a really pressing question, please put it in the chat. And how do we do that? As you can see from this image, there is a chat box on your Zoom bar. You can add your information into the chat. If you need to send a direct message to a presenter, you can do that by using the little drop down to select a name. Otherwise, your message will go to everybody. How do you change your name? For those of you that are not familiar, when you look at your little tile picture of yourself, it might be a black square. If you click on the 3 little ellipses next to the unmute button, you'll get a little box that'll give you options, and rename should be the bottom of the list. And all right, we're about to get started. What we're going to cover today, we just did your welcome and some instructions. We're going to start with OTA and TURA services offered. We're going to discuss changes in the reporting for RY 2024 and new PFAS chemicals, reporting skills and common problems. We'll take a quick break so that everybody can get up and stretch. And then we'll discuss enforcement and common reporting mistakes, EDP for TURA reporting and how to use the amend, and the data release results. Then we'll do a Q&A and questions, cover submitting on time in a hyperlink document, most of which will just tell you about what things that we're going to include. And then we will take questions in the chat after each segment, and we can do some Q&A comments. And anybody that is looking for CEU credits, those will be offered for completion of the training and a quiz. Okay, let me stop sharing, and Tiffany, you're up.
Great, good morning, everyone. Let me just get set up here. Okay. All right, everybody can see my screen, correct?
Yep.
Excellent. So good morning. My name is Tiffany Skogstrom, and I'm the director of the Massachusetts Office of Technical Assistance, otherwise known as OTA, and I'm also the executive director of the Toxic Use Reduction Act's Administrative Council. So I'm going to go over OTA services and some of the basics and general information. So the Toxic Use Reduction Act was created in 1989. And that covers companies that are manufacturers in certain standard industrial classification codes. If they have 10 or more employees and they manufacture or process threshold limits of certain listed chemicals, then they have to do a few things. They have to report to the state, pay a fee, and every 2 years do a toxic use reduction plan. Just a reminder that TURA does not prohibit or ban companies from using listed chemicals. It's just a planning requirement. OTA is one of 3 agencies that implements the Toxics Use Reduction Act. So we have MassDEP, which is hosting our webinar today. So they're the regulatory arm. So they do the enforcement, collect the fees. And then we have our sister agency at the Toxics Use Reduction Institute, or TURA, who you'll hear from a little bit later in just a few minutes. And they're the academic research arm. And then there's OTA. And we were created by the Act to provide free and confidential technical assistance to Massachusetts toxics users. So TURA is a state law and not a federal law, and we're not part of EPA. OTA is unusual because it's a non-regulatory agency, and it's written into the Act that we're confidential. And so we're free to all Massachusetts businesses that use toxics, and we give recommendations for toxics use reduction and resource conservation. We have conducted thousands of site visits at thousands of facilities, reducing millions of pounds of toxic chemicals and saving companies millions of dollars in operating costs. Our technical assistance staff they can assist facilities with toxics use reduction or environmental compliance, and energy and resource conservation. We offer both on-site and remote assistance. And after an OTA site visit, companies will receive mini reports tailored to their needs, and OTA staff will follow up with you until you are satisfied and feel like we've helped you out. But we do try to tailor our reports and our effort to your needs and your priorities. OTA is staffed by chemists, engineers, and public health professionals, and they provide hands-on, or they have hands-on manufacturing experience. They really understand health and safety, the company's bottom line, the regulatory requirements, and how to implement those changes. Some frequently asked questions about OTA. Is our work truly confidential? Yes, we'll never disclose anything about you, not to enforcement, not to anyone, without your written permission. And if you're out of compliance with laws and regulations, then we'll help you get in compliance. We can't and won't report on any violations. And what kind of work has OTA done before? We have some companies have given us permission to talk about how we've helped them, and we've done case studies with them, so you can see our case studies at this website. We also want to alert you and invite you to some upcoming tabletop exercises that we have coming up in June. Some of you may be familiar with our chemical safety and climate change resiliency curriculum and program. On June 24th, we'll be doing a tabletop exercise at Lawrence Heritage State Park. On June 25th, we'll be doing a tabletop exercise at Holyoke Community College. We'll have more information with a QR code and how to register for these. But basically, we're inviting businesses, local health professionals, emergency planning, community organizations to talk about chemical hazards and preventing chemical exposure during a climate change or severe weather-related disaster. So this is an opportunity for you to learn about improving emergency response and really thinking about chemical safety and climate change. And also OTA technical staff will be there, and we're happy to help on any of these issues too. So please stay tuned for that information coming up. And with that, I will stop sharing and hand it over to our sister agency at TURA.
All right, I am taking over. I'm Heather Tenney from TURA. Let me just grab my slides. All right, seeing that okay? Okay. So, so happy to be here with you today. I will tell you a little bit about TURA services and what we have going on at the moment. Okay. So this slide shows an overview of the majority of TURI's activities. We do education and training for TUR planners. Oftentimes the first introduction to TURI is through the TURP planner course or the TURP continuing education conferences. And I have a couple more slides about those activities in a minute. We also manage the TURA Science Advisory Board, which is a group of experts which makes recommendations on chemicals for the TURA list, listing, delisting, a higher hazard substance, lower hazard substance. Once that group has made recommendations, TURI writes a policy analysis. So TURI is responsible for those policy analyses on changes to the chemical list, adding policy into the science recommendations from the Science Advisory Board to present at the advisory committee and the administrative council before changes can be made to the TURA list. TURI also helps DEP analyze the TURA data that you guys are all learning about reporting today through quality control and analysis of progress, including increases and decreases in production and how that affects our numbers. TURI also has a we also research, develop, and assess safer alternatives to toxics. We have a university research grant program that connects businesses that are in need of finding novel alternatives that are safer with researchers at UMass Lowell to come up with new alternatives. We also have laboratory services for industrial and janitorial cleaning. And we also do alternatives assessments. One of our more recent alternatives assessments is on halogenated solvents. You can find that on our website, so that might be of interest to people currently. We also provide technical and financial support to businesses and communities through grants and through information resources. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And we also assist with supply chain and work groups and research when the supply chain is affecting the ability to change away from particular toxics. So in terms of education and training, recently we've coordinated with ChemCon to offer the opportunity to TUR planners to attend the International ChemCon conference that was held in March in 2025. And that was an opportunity in part to learn more about the regulatory landscape on an international level. We've also recently had courses and webinars on alternative planning. We had a hybrid TURA environmental management system course in March that had an in-person segment at GEM Graveur. And we also just last week did an energy conservation webinar in conjunction with OTA. The TURP Planner course starts in August with remote modules and continues on into October with in-person sessions. There have been improvements to that course recently, including a more user-friendly interface. Beyond the safety data sheets course, which provides more training on additional environmental health and safety resources, not surprisingly, beyond the safety data sheets, is free, available online anytime. And we just recently did an in-house training at FlexCon. So if you have staff that are interested in having that training, please let us know. You can always track the upcoming events from TURI's homepage and calendar, and you can always reach out to training@turi.org for more information. Some additional upcoming webinars next week. We have an environmental justice webinar, June 4th. There's also a couple weeks after that, math skills for TUR reporting and planning. That's eligible for 3 CEUs. And our goal is to offer additional webinars monthly on policy, technology, science, and planning skills, focus areas. And again, that TURP course starts in August 2025. And then coming up in early 2026 is the resource conservation planning course. In terms of grants, we have a current grant with New Method Plating, which aims to eliminate TCE use and set up a demonstration site to help continue to move away from TCE for those applications that have been tricky. We're also finishing off our work with Conklin Office Furniture, which it was replacing toxic solvents used for furniture refinishing. We have a current research grant that's in its second year with Hertz Corporation. Again, this is a company that was looking to replace PFAS in their operation. They reached out to TURA. TURA connected them with a university researcher, and they are working on, and I think, finding success with PFAS-free fabrics for automotive applications. We also are working on safer alternatives to PFAS and food packaging, an issue that affects us all. And we had provided grant funds for UMass Lowell to purchase a PIGGY machine. They call it a PIGGY machine. That's particle-induced gamma emission machine to identify PFAS in objects. And so we have 2 grants that are following up on the purchase of that equipment. With Clean Water Fund and Silent Spring Institute, looking for PFAS in consumer products, children's products, and cosmetics. So we are eagerly looking at the results coming in from that. And then in terms of community grants, we have a grant with the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission to look at plastics and microplastics in food applications and educate to reduce those. And there's a grant with the Brazilian Women's Group, which is transferring to safer cleaning products for house cleaners. So we're always really happy to have you connect with us. You can check out more information on these topics at www.tura.org. If you haven't already, please sign up for our newsletter that is linked here. And then we frequently post information on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. So one of those 3 social media sites will give a little bit more information about what we're doing. There's a link here to connect with our staff. You can call the main number and they will connect you with whoever is most appropriate. We're always happy to hear from you and answer any questions. And with that, I think I'm handing it back to Rebecca.
Yes, thanks, Heather. Lynn, you are up next. So I'm going to share my screen for your presentation.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay. Hi, good morning. I'm Lynn Kane of the MassDEP TURA program. I'll be discussing changes to TURA reporting for reporting year 2024. The changes document can be found here on MassDEP's website. The TURA instructions and appendices can be found on our can also be found on our website. They have been updated. The reporting instructions was updated to replace Walter Hope's contact info since he has retired with the TURA program email address. In addition, Leonie Desai has taken over Walter's TURP certification responsibilities. The PFAS guidance in Appendix B was updated, beginning on page 63, to indicate that PFAS added to TRI in 2023 are now reportable under TURA individually, rather than in the TURA PFAS NOL not otherwise listed category. The complete list of TURA chemicals was updated to include recently added TRI PFAS and other recently added TRI chemicals. That I'll discuss a little bit later. Effective this reporting year, TRI PFAS are no longer eligible for the de minimis exemption because EPA has designated them as chemicals of special concern. PFAS that are not TRI reportable should continue to be reported under the TURA Certain PFAS NOL category. Please refer to the TURA PFAS guidance again on page 63 of the TURA reporting instructions appendices. Effective reporting year 2024, this reporting year, the TRI de minimis level for trivalent antimony compounds has been changed from 1% to 0.1%, since these chemicals are classified as carcinogens due to assessment by IARC. They are reportable under the antimony compounds category, which is TUR CAS number 1000. "21 new chemicals and 1 chemical category have been added to the TUR chemical list. These chemicals were reportable under TRI effective reporting year 2023 and are now reportable under TRI effective this reporting year 2024. 9 of these chemicals are PFAS with a 100-pound reporting threshold. These chemicals are reportable individually and are listed in Table 1, beginning on page 65 of the TURA reporting instructions appendices. These 12 chemicals and 1 chemical category, the diisononyl phthalate DINP category, are non-PFAS additions to TRI in reporting year 2023, last year under TRI, that are now reportable under TURA effective this reporting year 2024. The new DINP category, TURA CAS number 1048, includes but is not limited to these 6 chemicals. Effective next reporting year, 2025, for reports due July 1st, 2026, 7 new PFAS have been added to the TRI list with a 100-pound reporting threshold for TRI reporting year 2024. The TURA Administrative Council added these new PFAS to the TURA chemical list effective under TURA next reporting year 2025 for reports due July 1st, 2026. Until then, most of these chemicals should be reported under the TURA certain PFAS NOL category for reporting year 2024.
Sorry.
These set.
Sorry, mine, hold on.
Sorry.
Sorry, technical difficulty. I don't know what.
Only one more slide.
I know, but
I know. It's okay.
Put on me. Sorry. Let's try that again. All right. There you go.
Thank you. Okay, so to backtrack a little, so here we're discussing the 7 new PFAS chemicals. These 7 PFAS are shown here. 4 of these PFAS that meet the TURA certain PFAS NOL definition are visible at the end of Table 4 in the PFAS guidance in the TURA reporting instructions appendices. The other 3 PFAS that do not meet the TURA certain PFAS NOL definition will be visible next reporting year 2025 in Table 1 in the PFAS guidance in the TURA reporting appendices. There will be an additional 9 PFAS added under TURA effective the year after next for reporting year 2026. Heather Tenney will present a PFAS update next.
All right. Sorry, Heather, you're up.
Okay, share my slides. Okay, still good?
Yes.
Okay, so I want to build upon what Lynn talked about a little bit with the changes to the reporting list in relation to PFAS, and also just remind us all of what's reportable under TURA. So as I hope that you remember, but just in case you don't, or it's new to anyone, the certain PFAS NOL category was added to TURA for reporting year 2022. That category was the result of like 5 years of scientific review at the TURA Science Advisory Board. The Science Advisory Board makes recommendations on things that they have reviewed science for. And so we have a little bit of a complicated definition because we needed a definition that related to the science that was available to review. So that category includes a perfluoroalkyl moiety with 3 or more carbons. You see an example of that to the right. A perfluoroalkyl ether moiety with 2 or more carbons. You see an example of that to the right. Where in the example structures that are shown above in the EGs, the dash is not a bond with hydrogen and can represent a straight or branched structure and is also not otherwise listed on TURA, hence the NOL. So as if that isn't complicated enough, we also have the situation where TRI something happened.
Yeah, we lost the slide.
I don't think it was me, but let me go back. So TRI was also adding PFAS through the National Defense Authorization Act. I'm just grabbing my slides to pull them back up while I keep talking. Of course, even though...
If you need me to pull your slides up, Heather, I can do that for you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if it happens again, I'm going to take you up on that, but...
The slides are not showing.
They're still not showing?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'll take you up on that, Rebecca.
All right, just give me 1 second.
I'm going to keep talking a little bit while you're doing that. So at the same time that TURA was adding a certain PFAS NOL category, TRI was adding PFAS through the National Defense Authorization Act. So in 2020, they added 172 PFAS to TRI, and every year since then, they've added additional PFAS. And when Rebecca gets my slides back, we've got a table that tries to make a little sense of this for you so you can kind of see like what's happening. So DEP does follow EPA, and that's part of the slides, but also there are a lot more PFAS that are hazardous than what EPA is adding through TRI. So that's why we reviewed a larger set of science under TURA and developed our own category. And also, you know, yeah, I do see them back, thanks. Also, the National Defense Authorization Act, I think took a lot of people by surprise. So unfortunately, we didn't necessarily know that work was going on while we were working on our own PFAS work. So this table is just trying to kind of like show you the structure of what's going on. TURA certain PFAS NOL was first reportable to TRI for reporting year 2022, reports due to DEP July 1st, 2023. It is a category, and the thresholds are 25,000 pounds manufactured or processed and 10,000 pounds otherwise used, like any TURA chemical. As I said in the next slides down, TRI was adding PFAS through NDAA starting in 2020, first reportable in 2021. The TURA statute says that TURA shall adopt changes to TRI, so we do that, but it does require a vote first. So typically the changes to TURA lag by a year. So TRI is adding PFAS every year since 2020 so far, 2021, 2022, 23, 24, 25. Those are reportable under TURA individually at 100 pounds, but there is typically a year delay from when they are added to TRI. Next slide, please. So we have developed PFAS guidance to try to keep track of all this for you. We understand it's really challenging to keep track of. It's actually really challenging for us to keep track of as well. And those are what Lynn was referring to starting at page 63 in the reporting appendices. We've provided lists as guidance for reporting. The TURA certain PFAS NOL lists were generated from lists known to be in commerce, primarily coming from the EPA TSCA reporting. We do, when we find out about additional PFAS through some means, oftentimes because somebody's finding it in the environment, we check those against the TURA definition and update the list then to be as comprehensive as possible. Reminder that the PFAS on the TURA list that come from TRI are reportable individually at 100 pounds, so a much lower reporting threshold. And as Lynn said, there is no de minimis exemption this year, starting this year for those. Some of the PFAS NOL category also overlaps with the C1 to C4 halogenated compounds, so that is broken out for you in the guidance document as well. And finally, we have tried to be as comprehensive as possible with these lists from what information is publicly available. Unfortunately, a third of the TSCA list for PFAS is confidential business information. So because of that, the lists are not exhaustive. You should always go back to the definition where you can, but we're trying to provide you as much information as we can to be as helpful as we can with this. Next slide, please. So when you go to page 63, and I think Lynn said this table 1 starts on page 65, in the guidance, you're going to see stuff like this. The first page just talks about what's going on where, and then we're providing you table 1, which are the TURA PFAS that came from TRI that are reportable individually at 100 pounds per year. So this is table 1. They're in order of CAS number. This goes on for a couple pages in the guidance. So you can see what's reportable individually at 100 pounds per year. There are a couple additional table 2 and table 3. Table 2, let me just check, are PFAS that were already listed on TURA. They were historically part of the TRI or the CIRCLE list. Those are reportable individually at 25,000 pounds and 10,000 pounds. Just like any TURA reportable chemical. Table 3 shows PFAS that are also reportable under the C1 to C4 category. If you are reporting one that meets both definitions, you only have to pay 1 fee. You don't have to pay 2 fees, but you need to let DEP know about that. You do have to report both categories. And then next slide, please. Finally, table 4, which is kind of like the bulk of the PFAS guidance. And those are PFAS that are known to be in commerce that are reportable as part of a certain PFAS NOL category. So again, these are organized by CAS number. This table goes on for several pages in the guidance document. And when you get to the very end of it, you'll see PFAS that are currently reportable under TRI at the 100-pound reporting threshold, but not yet under TURA. They may have been voted on or they may not have been voted on, but they're the delay. Those are going to be moved into table 1 for next year. So there's a lot going on here. We've tried to break it all down for you in the guidance document. And we're happy to talk to you individually to work through it as well. So that information is there in the guidance document for you. Next slide, please. So what's TURA doing here? TURA is bringing the preventative approach. There's a lot of other important work going on in PFAS. We're finding it everywhere in the environment. TURA is bringing our typical preventative approach to PFAS. We're asking you to evaluate the use and function. Is it really necessary to use PFAS in your process? Do you even know if you're using PFAS in your process? Unfortunately, it's not always obvious. Applying our typical TUR planning, identifying process improvement opportunities so we can use the smallest amount. If we have to keep using it, use the smallest amount possible and lose and release as little as possible. Evaluating safer alternatives. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And reporting under TURA allows us to focus program resources, technical assistance, grants, research, and information to the PFAS issue, and it also provides right-to-know reporting on use and byproduct. Next slide, please. So safer alternatives, we had our first grant a few years ago on PFAS as soon as we were adding the certain PFAS NOL category to the TURA list. we were looking for grant opportunities to try to find alternatives. And a few years ago, finding alternatives seemed like a pretty heavy lift. And it is a heavy lift. PFAS are really functional and useful chemicals. But we had our first grant project with the Transene company. They were looking to eliminate PFAS in their microelectronics operation. And that project was successful. It took about 18 months, and they found an alternative, and the alternative actually ended up being cheaper than the PFAS. So as well as having a product that was more marketable, they have a product that is actually cheaper. And you can find information on the TURA website about that case study. And there's also a YouTube video linked here. Next slide, please. So just to show what we have for reporting information thus far on PFAS, again, reporting year 2022 was the first reporting year for PFAS, the certain PFAS NOL category under TURA. This is reporting year 2023 information. Biggest usage is in a company that makes fire suppression equipment. Next, couple companies make rubber products, and next up is wire and cable. That was actually a new filer and reporting year 2023. So back to my original slide, I'm not asking to go back there, but just thinking back to that fun definition. We know when we add chemicals to the TURA list that filers will trickle in over a course of years. Like, even though we tried to do a lot of outreach and a lot of education around this issue, we know that not every filer will get it the first year. So in this case, the wire and cable company came in the second reporting year. And one of the reasons for us talking about this today is to make sure, the companies have really checked to see if they're using PFAS, whether they have a reporting obligation, and they're keeping track of the constantly evolving landscape on PFAS. So a couple small uses for maintenance products and membranes. All of that pie of use together is about a little over 3 million pounds. It's down a little bit from the first reporting year, which was almost 4 million pounds. In terms of releases, only 2-3 companies are reporting releases of PFAS. One, the biggest release is in membranes, second biggest in fire suppression, and then maintenance products. That whole pie results in a little over 5,000 pounds of releases. And that's down a little bit from a little under 10,000 pounds in reporting year 2022. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate the resources that are available to you, the TURA reporting instructions has information about PFAS. Again, the bulk of the useful information is in the reporting appendices, starting on page 63 for PFAS specifically. In the guidance. And again, we've tried to navigate all those changes that we're talking about for you, so you can go to those 4 tables and find out what you have to report where, as long as it's not confidential business information, as long as you're not using a CBI PFAS, in which case we don't have that information. The TURA chemical list also has a specific PFAS sheet that has that information in columns, so you can go there as well and get the same information that's in the tables. We update all those for you at least once a year and more if there seems to be more going on through TRI. And again, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to work through it with you. Look up the chemical structure, help you decide whether it meets the definition. OTA has a list a letter you can send to suppliers, and I'm actually going to hand it over to Tiffany from OTA now to talk about some surveys that they have to help you assess whether you might be using PFAS in your facility.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Some of you might have heard me refer to PFAS as being a group project. And so think of OTA and TURI and the whole TURA program as your source reduction partners in PFAS. So a few years ago when we started knocking on people's doors asking about PFAS use, no one really answered. However, as PFAS has become more prevalent in conversations, we've had more and more conversations with companies about PFAS use and source reduction. So you've probably remember that we've created a few surveys on PFAS source reduction, trying to look at industries that might be using PFAS so that we can help you identify your use of PFAS so that we can then help you eliminate its use or find safer alternatives. So we've done this for metal finishing processes, and also we've done this for the paper industry. So if you're in one of those industries and you haven't done a survey with us, please seek us out. How that works is that OTA staff will meet with you in person or over Teams and ask you a few upfront questions to get you ready by looking at getting your safety data sheets ready and going through all of your processes. And in the end, a little survey is spit back out to you so that you have documentation of going through your inventory, which may help. We also have a notification letter that we give people. It's on a Word document. You can actually download it and put it on your company letterhead. And that goes to the supplier, and we encourage people to copy their purchasing departments and anyone who's in charge of the inventory coming in to ask them to notify you of any incoming PFAS, which they're required to do for TRI, but not for TURA. But we did put the TURA chemicals on that template letter, so because why not? And we're contributing to developing product lists. We're also having conversations with other states that have technical assistance providers to try to help each other and keep updated on PFAS and just try to help industry identify the sources so that we can together help reduce its use and find alternatives. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have assessments to help you identify your sources, and you get teamed up with an OTA staff person, or you can do one of these surveys on your own. So we have paper and metal finishing done so far. The next are coatings and textiles. OTA staff can offer a second set of eyes to help you find sources of PFAS or look for CAS numbers. OTA and TURA will continue to pursue research on products of concern, and companies may opt to share product information with OTA to help us keep a list of PFAS free alternatives and also PFAS, known PFAS containing products. Go ahead. And that's it for me. Please do continue to talk with us about PFAS. We're always here to help.
I think this is a good point to pause for questions. So, Leonie, is there anything in the chat that anybody's had to ask about in the first couple presentations?
I don't think so. I think it's all been answered.
It looks like there's still an outstanding question from Maura Hawkins. Please confirm that the PFAS NOL category still has the de minimis exemption.
And that I will confirm that. That's correct, Maura.
Thanks.
Sorry,
Heather.
wasn't typing fast enough.
If anybody has any questions at this point that they want to ask, please feel free to raise your hand. I can unmute you and let you ask your question. Let's see any hands. Do have a question and answer from Chris Christic about foam PFAS.
I'm sorry, I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand. Could I just ask then?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We recently had a inspection of our sprinkler system. It was a 5-year inspection, and they had to drain a portion of the foam system. We have AFFF foam still. Will there be a reporting requirement next year for this, for any waste that we generated from that? Or how will this be handled? Is where we didn't really use it, but we're going to be generating some slight PFAS waste from the AFFF foam?
I can answer that question, but I always like to double check myself. So my understanding is once you've deployed that PFAS, you would have a reporting obligation for that. I would like to just double check in my notes because somebody asked this, I think, last year, and I could pop the answer into the chat in a couple of minutes, but also any other program person can confirm or deny for me as well. But my understanding from TRI, I can probably find this in the Q&A. Oh, if the Q&A still exists, which it probably doesn't, that once you deploy that PFAS from your fire suppression system, it would meet reporting obligations if you met thresholds, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. And
Yeah,
so,
Heather, I would agree.
Agree?
Yeah.
and it would be 100 pounds of the liquid containing the foam, because I think it's only in there at a 3% load-in. So would I be reporting 100 pounds of the 3% solution, or do I need 100 pounds of the actual PFAS that went into it?
Does DEP want to answer? I believe it would be the actual PFAS, but some
Yeah.
other regulatory person can confirm for me.
I believe you would be correct, Heather, on the percentage. You report based on what's in your PFAS.
Okay.
And you can check me if I'm wrong.
No, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That was helpful.
It looks like there's been a couple other ones that trickled in. Thank you, Karen, for getting that. If there's anybody else, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, we'll continue on. All right. Well then, Pam, it looks like you are up.
There we go. I just had to unmute myself. Okay. Thank you so much. Yeah, so PFAS is challenging, and I'm not surprised that there were a lot of questions there. I did post in the chat a question of whether people would like TURA to produce another webinar that really focuses on PFAS. So please feel free to respond to that or let us know. I am Pam Elias, and I'm with the Toxics Use Reduction Institute, and I'm the training director here. And I've been involved in the program for over 25 years. So Jack and I are both going to be sharing information about reporting skills that I think are kind of fundamental, foundational skills that you need when you're doing reporting, as well as common challenges that we know people face in reporting. And as Rebecca said, if you have a question, please feel free to use the chat. And I'm also happy to have a conversation within, reason, within the time limits. So before you get started in doing your reporting, so right now, you're at a point where you want to be making sure that you know which chemicals you use that are on the TURA or TRI reporting lists. So we've got a couple of resources that we've shared. DEP has a spreadsheet that they're updating as needed to make sure that you have all the information that you need for reporting. So you really should have that bookmarked and available. TRI also has a guidance document that can help you make sure that you know whether or not a chemical you're using, your facility is using, is actually listed and reportable. Also, you need to establish which of those chemicals might be persistent bioaccumulative toxics, because those have a significantly reduced reporting threshold, as do TURA higher hazard substances. So there's a handful of chemicals that the TURA program has listed or designated as higher hazard substances, and they have a 1,000 pound per year reporting threshold as opposed to the 25,000 pound or 10,000 pound per year reporting threshold. So make sure you know which chemicals you use that might fall under these special designations, and make sure that you know what those reporting thresholds are. Again, there's good resources available for you. You want to make sure that you're gathering all the data you need to quantify your chemical use at your facility. So typically that's purchasing, storage, shipping, waste kinds of data. You may also find information that's going to be helpful with your calculation of emissions or byproduct from permit and monitoring data that you may be collecting. And also, please always double check to make sure that the safety data sheet you're referencing when you're doing your reporting is current. So we know that vendors sometimes modify their formulations, and they may not have gone out of their way to let you know about those modifications. I really encourage you to double check on making sure that the safety data sheet you use is current. And then finally, don't assume that just because the reporting was done in the past that it was done so correctly. And not to point fingers at anybody, but it's a very complicated thing. And so when you are doing reporting, sometimes you have to make assumptions. You want to look at those and really challenge it. Are those assumptions valid? And then just make sure that you know whether or not there might be additional data available that you can use to give yourself a better sense of what your reporting obligations are. So, we've talked a lot so far about TURA and TRI reporting, and this table is really here just to kind of point out some of the key differences between those two universes, and they're not identical, right? So in Massachusetts, there is a larger range of industry sectors who are subject to TURA than they might be under EPA's TRI. There is a larger list of chemicals that are subject to reporting under TURA than there is under TRI. And there's a lot of nuances associated with that. Some of those are listed here, certainly not all of them. For instance, Pax and benzopyrrolene is only reportable under TURA if it's used in fuel oil, unless you're a utility. Dioxins are reportable on TURA as a category. TRI reports those individually. So there are differences between the reporting obligations. And then, of course, there's a different format that you use. So in Massachusetts, you need to report, you need to do the Form S, which is a Massachusetts specific reporting format. But also, you need to evaluate whether or not you're using a chemical that's reportable in Massachusetts, but not under EPA's TRI, in which case you have to use a state-only Form R or Form A. So yeah, it's complicated. And again, please do take advantage of the program staff present here to get assistance if you need it. So there's some important reporting practices we want to remind you about. You want to make sure that just because something was not reportable in the previous year, that it is not still falling below that reporting threshold. So don't assume that once something is not reportable, that remains the same. Conditions change. You want to check and make sure that you're accounting for all of the chemicals that are being used throughout your facility. And remember that sometimes chemicals are referred to by different names. So refer back to the CAS number, that unique identifier, to make sure that you're accounting for all of the uses of your chemical throughout your facility. You want to evaluate all the processes where your chemical is being used when you're determining the total use for your facility. Think about whether or not you might be using a chemical in water treatment or wastewater pretreatment because that is also a reportable use for your facility. Those are typically acids and bases. And then you want to be thinking about whether or not your process may be coincidentally manufacturing chemicals. And Jack's going to go into a little bit more detail on that for you. So what do we mean by manufacture, process, or otherwise use? These are really important distinctions that you need to understand so that you're using the correct reporting threshold. So we've referenced a couple times that there are two general reporting thresholds. There's the 25,000 pound per year if you manufacture or process a chemical, and then there's 10,000 pound per year reporting threshold if you are otherwise using a chemical. And what's the distinction? Manufacture is when you're creating the chemical. So you might intentionally be creating a chemical. That may be what you're doing. And that may be your product, or it's getting incorporated into your product. You might also be unintentionally creating it. And again, Jack's going to talk about some situations. If you are importing a substance, a toxic substance, that's also falls within the definition of manufacture under TURA. Processing a chemical is when you're taking a chemical and you're using it to create your product. And in fact, you intend for that chemical to be incorporated into your product. That's processing a chemical. So both manufacture and process are subject to the 25,000 pound per year reporting threshold. Otherwise used chemicals, or chemicals that are kind of process aids, they're serving a function within your operation, but they are not intended to be incorporated into the final product. So we know that nothing is 100% efficient, and you may have some carryover into the product of a chemical that you're not intending to be incorporated into the product. That doesn't change the fact that that chemical is still considered to be otherwise used and is therefore reportable, has a 10,000 pound per year reporting threshold. I just want to say I am not able to follow the chat while we do this. So if folks, hopefully other folks in the program are responding, and we'll stop and take questions in a minute. The other important aspect of reporting is designation of a production unit. So if your facility has been doing reporting for a number of years, you have already had to go through the process of designating production units within your facility. So those are processes or lines or activities or a combination that are used to make a product. So it's a process product combination. The definition of your production unit is up to you. It is what makes sense for you so that you can really most easily track your use of chemicals and your opportunities to reduce those toxic chemicals. It may have more than one reportable chemical associated with it. And it's kind of a foundational step in understanding where your reporting obligations are and what you need to report. So let's look at a more realistic example. Here's a situation where a facility is using sulfuric acid both in its production process and in its wastewater treatment pretreatment system. So there's a lot of information in this, and I'm going to show you a process flow diagram that could help with your reporting obligations. But first, looking at this information, what is the company's production ratio? That would be associated with this 14% increase that is information that presumably the person reporting for Anodizing Protection Inc. has received. So over the last year, production activity that makes sense to the facility and should be consistent year to year is used to establish what the increase or decrease in production is. So your production ratio would be 1.14, right? So 14% more than it was in the previous year. And then we have information about the amount used, how much of it that was used in the wastewater pretreatment system, and versus how much was used in the anodizing process, and then how much sulfuric acid was in byproduct generated by this facility. So what I recommend that you do, and you should be doing, is that you develop a process flow diagram, or a PFD. So here's a very simplistic version of a process flow diagram for that facility. So a couple of things I want to point out. Again, you see what is going into the different process steps. You've got their sulfuric acid that's being used in the anodizing process. We have some caustic that's being used in the etch process. We have designated a production unit boundary around these operations. So this facility has designated this operation as production unit 1. You'll notice that the wastewater pretreatment system, on the other hand, is outside of that production unit boundary. So under TURA, wastewater pretreatment is not part of a production unit. And here we show that there's an additional 50,000 pounds of sulfuric that are being added to the pretreatment system, presumably to neutralize the caustic that is coming in from the etch process. So not a very efficient system is my guess. And then here is some data from monitoring on the amount of sulfuric acid that is leaving the facility from the wastewater pretreatment system. So creating this process flow diagram and then double checking every year to make sure that the process flow diagram you have is accurate is an important thing for planners and reporters to double check on. And if your facility has 2 different individuals doing those steps, talk to each other. Make sure that what you are doing aligns. So the next step is to do mass balance. And a mass balance is the inputs that go into your operation should equal either what comes out of the operation or that stays within it. So input is equal to the output plus accumulation. For this process, we have 2 different production units, 2 different mass balances that we can do. The first is around the production unit itself. And we knew that 80,000 pounds of sulfuric acid are going into the anodized process. We're assuming that there's no sulfuric accumulated over the course of the year. That's an assumption that you should challenge. But in here, we're assuming that. So if input equals output plus accumulation, what is leaving that production unit should be equal to the input, so 80,000 pounds, right? That is going into your wastewater pretreatment system. So if you look at a mass balance around the facility itself, the inputs are the 80,000 pounds for anodizing plus the 50,000 pounds for wastewater pretreatment. So 130,000 pounds are used. The output was given to us by monitoring data. So look at this. We have an input and an output that are not equal. We're assuming there was no accumulation in the production unit. So what's happening in the wastewater pretreatment system? What's happening is that the sulfuric acid is being consumed to neutralize the caustic that's coming from the etch system. It is being transformed. There's a chemical reaction that is happening. So what the amount that is being accumulated or actually being consumed within that wastewater pretreatment system is 73,000 pounds. And when you look at your Form S reporting form, you can see these numbers. Input equals output plus accumulation. Inputs are manufacture, process, and otherwise use. Outputs are what is generated as byproduct or shipped in or as product. Sulfuric acid, both as an etchant and as a neutralization chemical, are not intended to be incorporated into this company's product. So 0 for that number. We don't have a mass balance. So what is happening? We have 73,000 pounds that are being consumed. Is a chemical used to treat waste? First of all, you'll answer yes. There is something non-routine occurring at your facility. And it is routine for you. It happens every year. This is a process, but it's not, it is a reason why you don't have a mass balance. And that's because there's waste treatment. So here you're going to be adding, what's the difference? It's that 50,000 that went into the wastewater pretreatment system itself. Okay, so I think now we're going to hand it over to Jack. Are there any questions in the chat that I should be addressing before we do that?
I think we've been trying to keep up with those, Pam, so I think you're all set.
Excellent, thank you. All right, well, Jack, it's all yours then.
Yes, hi. My name is Jack Illingworth. I'm with OTA. I'm one of the technical service providers as well as the technical service supervisor. So we're going to go through a few things here. Some commonly missed items in reports. Higher hazard substances. You know, they have a 1,000-pound threshold. Don't assume. Always double check. Make sure you know what you're talking about. That you're reporting things properly. Chemical categories, such as certain metals, for zinc and copper. Make sure you know those. PBTs and PFAS. You know, double check that. Lead, mercury, those type of things. There is no de minimis, so know what you're using. Report it all. Let's see. The differences between TUI and TURA, which Pam went through, and I think we might see that again here. So I think it's important enough to kind of double do that. So wastewater treatment and cleaning chemicals. Those are chemicals that you may be using to clean your tanks or your process equipment, as well as treatment. Make sure you know what those are. Typically, sodium hydroxide, sulfuric acid, maybe other acids, depending on what you do. New chemical listings for reporting years 24 and 25. Lynn covered those a little bit earlier. Make sure you know those. Double check on that. And coincidentally manufactured materials. Do you use nitric acid? Are you forming nitrate compounds when you're treating that? So make sure you know that. Next slide.
I'll move on, but I just want to point out that we have, you'll see in Jack's slides, we have some numbers noted here just to give you context about some of the chemicals that he'll be talking about, how much was actually reported in 2023.
So again, some differences between TRI and TURA reporting. Hydrochloric acid and sulfuric acid. In TRI, it's in the aerosol forms only. TURA reports both. Pay attention to that. Circular chemicals that are not TRI chemicals. These things will come up where you need to check both lists. DEP has that list. It's a great list, so feel free to use that. As well as TURA high hazard chemicals that have a 1,000-pound threshold. Pay attention to those as well. Next slide. Also, chemicals that sound the same but are actually different. TDI is a good example. There's 3 different types of TDI. Typically always referred to as TDI. So make sure you know those. Double check with the CAS numbers. Don't rely on just the name of the chemicals. In addition, always, pay attention to chemicals that may have several different, names that you use around your facilities and things like that. Formaldehyde's a great example. DEP will only give you 1, maybe 2 of those chemical synonyms. So again, always check your CAS numbers. Persistent bioaccumulative toxins. Again, make sure you know what you're using. They have different thresholds, different reporting quantities. Make sure you know what these are as well. There's a pretty good list here. And you'll be getting a copy of all this. So I'm not going to read every one of these to you, but, always double check your quantities. Chemical categories for some high hazard substances or PBDs. TURA will automatically generate you a Form R or Form S for all substances under the TURA thresholds. So make sure you know what they are. Chrome's a great example of some differences where hexavalent chromium is reported for the state as well as chromium compounds. Where you're reporting to EPA and TRI, you report chrome compounds for both. Next. Ammonia reporting. Anhydrous ammonia, you put the total amount of the anhydrous ammonia that's manufactured, processed, or otherwise used. And again, when calculating the product, it's byproduct, it's the total amount. When you're using aqueous ammonia or water dissoluble ammonium salts, you would use 10% of the total quantity for manufactured or otherwise used, as well as when you're reporting your byproducts. And you can see it's, this is explained in the TURA reporting appendices. So, feel free to check those out. And these links should all work when you get them as well. So this is one that you need to pay attention to. Coincidentally manufactured water dissoluble nitrate. So if you're using nitric acid and you're neutralizing it as part of your process, you have the potential to generate more than 25,000 pounds of the nitrates using less than that amount of nitric acid. So, using your molecular weights and calculating it. Go ahead, Pam, next. One more. Yeah, so here we go. So if you take your, what we're doing here is we're actually solving for how much nitric acid it would take to get your sodium nitrates at 25,000 pounds. So you take your molecular weights of both, you do a little bit of math, and you can see that it would take 18,529 pounds of nitric acid to being neutralized to trip the threshold of sodium nitrates. So these are things you need to check on through your wastewater treatment, that you're not coincidentally manufacturing something and missing it. All right, circular chemicals and EPA chemicals. So in this example, specifically circular chemicals that are part of an EPCRA category. In this case, a chemical would be reported as part of the EPCRA category. To help you make these determinations, we have a couple of different resources. The first is a list of reportable chemicals on DEP's website. The second is a section called Rules for Reporting Specifically Listed Chemicals in the Appendices, and it's linked here. The appendix will describe how to report chemicals for 12 specific situations. So give those a read, make sure you know what you're doing. So lead and lead compounds. So in this example here, we've used it in past workshops to address the reporting of elemental metals in their metal compound categories for some unique situations where both are used. In this example, you can see that they're using tin lead solder, and they're generating some solder dross. So when both are used over the 1,000-pound threshold, sorry, I got a little mixed up here. So we'll show on the next slide how to designate these in sections 1, 2, and 3 of the Form S. Go ahead, Pam. So if lead is used in excess of the 1,000-pound threshold and lead compounds are used in addition to the 100-pound threshold, you would report both lead and the lead compounds together as lead compounds on the reporting form, and you would pay only one fee for those. So you can see here, based on the example, which is kind of up in the top right-hand corner. Under section 1, you would report what was manufactured, which would be the lead dross at 1,715 pounds. What's processed would be the total amount of the solder used, which is the 3,054. You had nothing really otherwise used. The generated is byproduct. In the previous slide, we said that you sent out the 1,766 pounds to be, the 1,715 pounds to be recovered. And out of that, we got the report back that there was 1,588 pounds of lead in there. So you would report that. And I didn't read the whole example, but there was an increase by 1%. So you would, your production ratio would be 1.1. And you would also, in section 2, report the 1,715 pounds of chemical compounds as manufactured. So I think I got that. All right, non-integral recycling. This is another topic that people can find confusing when you're doing non-integral recycling on site. This is where the material is recycled. To be recycled is drummed up, transported to another part of the facility, reclaimed, put back in drums, and brought back into the production unit. Excuse me. It's not considered integral recycling because the recycling unit is not part of the production unit. It's a standalone unit. So for this type of reporting, it's example 4 from the TURA reporting guidance, which is on the bottom of the page. So you're required to count at the production unit level. You would need to report that 154 pounds being recycled every time, but you would not report it on the facility-wide use. So therefore, the on-site recycling doesn't count toward your facility use. So you would have, a reduction. And this is shown on the next slide in your reporting. So you have your production unit, which you have your recycled chemicals coming in at 145,000 pounds. You have your chemical input at 25,000 pounds. So you release 20,000 pounds to air. Now in this example, we're assuming that there's nothing left in the production unit. It's just kind of a high level look. So the total amount of byproduct would be 150 pounds, the 145 plus the 25 to be recycled, as well as your 20,000 pound air emissions. So if we look at, Form S reporting, go ahead, Pam, one more. So yeah. 0 manufactured, 0 processed. The otherwise used is the 25,000 chemical input. Generated as byproduct would be the total of your air emissions at 20,000 pounds, plus your 150,000 pounds that went off to the production unit. Just a side note, if this was integral recycling, your facility-wide usage would go down as well. And your total generated as byproduct would only be 20, would be the 20,000 pounds that went to air plus the 5,000 that went off site. So you would reduce that number as well. All right. Do I trip the thresholds for reporting hydrogen fluoride? Do you use hundreds of pounds of this every year? And how are you using it? And are you using ammonium fluoride to generate salt? So remember, the ammonium bifluoride, when added to water, will generate the HF, which would be reported as manufactured. And then if the hydrogen fluoride is used to etch, the manufactured hydrogen fluoride is also otherwise used. And you would be reporting this in section 1E. And remember that the ammonium bifluoride is also a reportable chemical. So remember, pay attention to the amounts that you're generating there. Again, this is explained in the TURA reporting appendices. Cyanide compounds. If you use 100 pounds of cyanide salts every year, do you plate and do metal etching with the cyanide plating bath? To determine if you trip the Turing threshold for cyanide, review the MassDEP guidance. This is again the best way to do that. So, cyanide compounds. If you use cyanide compounds, I have a duplicate slide here. I don't have this one. So remember, just to pay attention to what you're doing with your reporting quantities. And check your reporting for the cyanide compounds and the TURA reporting appendices. Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Somehow I lost the slide. So again, here are some resources that you have that were mentioned throughout. So, and all these links will be live, so you could be able to click on them as we go through the report. As you go through them, rather.
Thanks, Jack.
That's what I got. So.
Good. And here is both Jack and my contact information. Before we end it and answer any questions you might have, remind folks that we do have a webinar coming up on June 17th at noon. It's an hour-and-a-half webinar, eligible for 3 continuing education credits. And it is focused on math skills for planning and reporting. So really encourage people to join us, and there is a link to register for that. And I am done. We are done. Any questions?
I think we had one in here from Mara Hawkins. It says, can we have a discussion about cleaning chemicals? When do they become reportable? A maintenance chemical that is not related to production, cleaning trucks, that type of thing. So those would be otherwise used chemicals and be reported at the facility level at the 10,000 pound threshold.
I'm sorry, can I follow up on that?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, if they're otherwise used but not in a production unit, but if they're used in cleaning a truck outside, are those facility use chemicals? Are those facility wide? Do we have to add those?
Are you like outside in the parking lot or by an outside company?
I would say outside in the parking lot.
Yeah, they would still be used. Those would still be reportable.
And if they were used to clean the parking lot itself, would they be reportable?
I would have to look into that one. Excuse me. I would have to double check that one and get back to you, Mara. That's a good question. I would assume yes, but I'm not 100% sure.
Does anyone from DEP want to comment on that?
I'm not 100% on that one either. Yeah, Jack and I would have to double check. I would assume so, but can't say for sure.
So we can get back to Maura on that, but it is a question that others, I'm sure, would benefit from. So maybe we can, clarify and let folks on the webinar know.
Yep, we can either get it to everybody if we have time before the end of the day. If not, we can send that one out with the links that we send after the meeting.
So if you're using a chemical for cleaning inside the building that's not related to the production unit, it's just in the building, we're just going to report that as facility-wide use, but not put it into a production unit.
Right,
Yes.
I think so.
I'm gonna put the relevant portion from the statute there. I mean, I think it all, I don't want to answer for DEP, but I mean, typically it all comes down to whether it's used for production or not, like
That's what
routine.
my understanding was.
Right. So
I agree. Yeah.
let me just pop that into the chat in a second from the statute. And normally I would refer to the Q&A for additional clarification, but I do not see the Q&A. I don't know if anybody on this call has accessed it recently.
I was having a hard time getting it up. But I did pull up an answer, and there is a question similar to this, more in relation to the US government and cleaning of prison cells and other areas. Chemicals used in these activities are exempt from threshold determinations and release and other waste management calculations under the routine janitorial or facility grounds maintenance exemption. If you're cleaning certain areas, I can drop that into the chat.
Yeah, I thought the janitorial exemption applied for any of these cleaning and, grounds applications as well, but wasn't sure whether it applied to cleaning equipment, like cleaning production equipment.
Let me see.
Or transportation equipment in particular.
Yeah. Yeah, we're not talking about production equipment. Yeah.
I understand the transportation equipment thing.
Yeah.
That seems that's production related, but
right.
The routine janitorial or facility grounds maintenance exemption can be claimed only for those activities that are not integral to the operations of the facility. Only activities that are not process related are eligible for this exemption. So in the instance of the prison, housing people is a process related activity, so they are not able to use that exemption. So it would kind of depend on the process that your industry in question is performing. I'll drop this in the chat as well, and everybody can take a look. And thank you to Kelly, who also dropped that in.
I would like if MassDEP could also answer the question on cleaning trucks that deliver product away from the building. They're outside the products, they're outside the facility.
Okay, I'll add that to the list of answers. We'll get back to you on more.
Thank you so much.
Karen Siegel also said, I know paving the parking lot is reportable under TRI. It's not directly related to a production unit. Well, I wasn't aware that paving the parking lot was reportable under TRI. I mean, I'm aware that asphalt batch plants need to report under TURA.
But paving the parking lot would not be. That would not be a process related, right?
No.
Okay.
If worse comes to worse, we can always ask EPA to get an answer specifically for that one for you, Maura.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There are a couple other questions as well. Cindy Keegan asked, lead example double count the amount into the process and then that you manufacture soldered dross. We have always looked at that as byproduct since it is not in addition to the amount put in at the beginning. Is this the case for TRI and TURA or only TUR? I guess I don't quite know what you mean, Cindy. Can you speak?
Well, let me share this slide I think she's referencing.
Okay. Sure.
I think that's the one you're talking about, Cindy. And so what we show is that the solder dross, which is lead compounds, not lead, and then it is considered to be manufactured, right? So this is diving into the lead versus lead compounds issue. Jack, do you want to expound on that?
No, I think that's exactly what I was going to say. So the soldered dross is manufactured. That's why you're reporting that.
Okay. And
Does that answer your question, Cindy?
So you're going to get a lead amount and you're going to get a lead compounds amount that seem additive, but in fact they're double counting.
It is. That's why you wouldn't have the material balance at the end.
Right, let me just show that again.
Am I saying that right?
Right, yeah, because what's going in is not equal to what's going out.
Yeah, not if you're considering the solder process
Having been manufactured.
lead compounds and reporting both.
Yes,
Right.
you're putting what you processed, right, as well as what you manufactured.
And then, so yeah, so you're saying yes is no material balance. No, it's not associated with waste treatment.
Yeah.
Okay, Sandra Wyman asked a question. She said, I'm confused. If ABF coincidentally manufactures hydrogen fluoride, you said to report it as otherwise used as it is an etchant. Can we look back at that slide? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
So when you add the ammonium bifluoride to water, you report that as manufactured. And then if it's used as an etchant, the amount that was manufactured is reported as otherwise used in the etching process.
All right, for some
But
reason.
the amount that's coincidentally manufactured is reported as manufactured.
It's reported as manufactured.
Mm-hmm. Can you make it bigger, Pam?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Let me try. I don't know why it's not giving me
slideshow, I guess. Yeah.
All right, I'll stop sharing. Yeah, sorry. Wrong view. All right, let's try this. Just to look at that again. And then let me just go back because I think it was, where were we? Nope, is that it?
It's, I think
no.
It's, I'm sorry.
No, that's nitrate.
It's this one.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Right. So when you add your ABF to water, say to make your plating bath, you're manufacturing you're reporting the amount of HF manufactured as manufactured, because the reaction takes place with the water. So now you're given an amount of hydrogen fluoride that has been manufactured. And then it is also reported, the amount that's used to etch the metal is also reported as otherwise used at the production unit, but not reported on the facility-wide level. And this is one that, yes, Sandra, that's correct. You take the ABF, calculate the HF generated, and that's what's coincidentally manufactured.
And what we can do for future, for the future is to actually show how you'd be reporting this on the Form S.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for Jack or myself?
Beth Fitzpatrick had one asking about whether they should still assume half the detection limit for earthen materials where lead is non-detect.
Half the detection limit for earthen materials where lead is non-detect.
Boy, that'd be a question for John Rashko, who's not here right now, and I will ask him that, Beth, and get back to you. John's the guy that's good at that.
Yeah, the guidance.
I don't have an answer off the top of my head for that. So.
Right. The guidance that I remember, Dwight Peavy, for those of you who remember Dwight, was that when you have your safety data sheet and it says non-detect or no, actually that won't get to it. I take it back. We'll need to follow up with that, and so hopefully that can also be included in any communications after this webinar. So thanks, Caradwin, for keeping an eye on all that. And yes, we'll get back to everybody on these outstanding questions.
Okay, I also want to correct myself. Karen Siegel referred to Dwight Peavy's previous presentations of having report lead, and if they've paved their facilities paved their parking lot, and I guess it is reportable under TURA. I've looked it up. If a parking lot facility uses, processes, or otherwise manages lead in an amount exceeding this threshold, is subject to TURA reporting. But I wasn't familiar with that, so.
Looks like there's also some ongoing question about the article exemption. Samantha Herr might be fastest for whoever wants to answer to just refer to the questions.
So the distinction, the thing with articles is that it needs to not be, the form of it needs to not be impacted in any appreciable way in the process of the, operation. So when you're doing extruding, you're obviously going to be impacting the form of the plastics in which the antimony is found. Anybody from DEP want to add to that or modify what I just said? Okay, it's great that people are asking very specific questions, and I think that we want to probably gather our responses to some of these questions and include them in any outreach after the webinar so that everybody gets it.
TURA always has been a very complicated program, and TRI, and it continues to be. So, lots of gray areas.
And there are just some metals that we handle slightly differently. I'm not sure if antimony is one of those or not, but off the top of my head. All right, so I'm gonna say everybody, we get a 15-minute break now before we continue on, so everyone stays on track. I'm gonna pause the recording for All right, Leonie, go ahead. Take it away.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Leonie Desai, and I'm an environmental analyst with MassDEP. And today I'm going to be talking about TURA enforcement. So let's talk about the basics of the TURA program enforcement. So TURA enforcement covers a wide range of infractions, examples of which are warning letters, NONs or notices of noncompliance, RPANs or reporting penalty assessment notices, and ACOPs or administrative consent orders with penalty. And these infractions are in order of increasing severity. Enforcement can be issued to facilities, planners, or both facilities and planners, depending on the situation. Reporting-based enforcement is generally preceded by outreach, and program-specific enforcement is different than inspection-based enforcement, especially inspection-based enforcement from a regional office. So let's talk about avenues of enforcement that the program will be evaluating during this non-planning year, specific to facilities. There are two main avenues. The first is failure to file, which includes failure to file the standard TURA report for your facility. And the second is filing an incomplete report. This includes missing chemicals and failure to respond to QA/QC outreach. Let's go over the three types of QA/QC issues we see. The first one involves the reported byproduct not matching the Form R data. So either the byproduct on the Form S is greater than the sum of transfers and releases to the environment and the amount reported as treated on-site, recycled on-site, and energy recovered on-site, or the byproduct is less than the sum of transfers and releases to the environment. Byproduct should equal the sum of column B in section 8, as section 8 is essentially a summary chart for your answers from sections 5 through 7. And here is a screenshot of section 8 with column B highlighted. So once again, your total byproduct should equal the sum of sections 8.1 through 8.7, so that whole column. The next QA/QC issue is having an incorrect production ratio or activity index. This means that the production ratio was reported as being less than 0.5 or greater than 2, or as being equal to 0. A production ratio of 0.5 means that production is down 50% from last year, while a ratio of 2 means that production has doubled from last year. If this is actually the case, please provide an explanation in section 5 of the Form S, which is pictured here. A production ratio of 0 would mean that there is no production in the current year, which is obviously incorrect if you are reporting for the current year. If this is your first year reporting, the production ratio should be marked as 1. For those of you that fill out a federal Form R, please note that they have introduced a production ratio wizard this year as a tool to help you calculate your production ratio. Lastly, there is not meeting eligibility for a state-only Form A. A facility may only use a Form A if they use less than 1 million pounds of a chemical, generate less than 500 pounds of byproduct, and if the chemical is not a PBT. Otherwise, the facility must report a state-only Form R. If a facility does not meet these requirements and uses a Form A, MassDEP may follow up with enforcement action. Additionally, you may receive this QA/QC notification if you are required to complete a federal Form R and fail to do so. Now, here are some reminders for the upcoming year. Maintain your on-site paperwork to meet regulatory record-keeping requirements. Our suggestion is that you set a designated place in your facility where your paperwork is located. As we all know, companies undergo staffing changes. If only one person knows where things are kept or how they're accessed, it can be an issue during the on-site inspection portion of an audit. The TURA program is not able to make changes on reports for filers. All changes must be made electronically via the amend feature. We recommend that facilities initiate the online transaction and share access with their TURA planners or consultants as needed. However, we have updated EDP to allow any user who has been granted access to a transaction to initiate an amend, so please keep that in mind. The authorized signature name on the fee page should match the first and last name of the person signing that fee page. Be sure to include below threshold chemicals only on the Form S Section 3, which is shown here. If the only chemical your facility reports on is below threshold, or all chemicals your facility historically reported on are below threshold for a filing year, fill out a non-applicability form instead. The non-applicability form is linked here on this slide and is also available on mass.gov's TURA page. If your facility is closing, we ask that you please complete the closure form. The closure form is linked here and is also available on mass.gov. It allows us to close out your TURA records in the system. If you have a question or an issue when completing your filing, such as not being presented with an expected form, please contact the TURA program. It is best to reach out to us at tura.program@mass.gov. If you find a mistake in your filing, please amend it. There are instructions online on how to amend if you need them, or you can contact a TURA program staff member for guidance. Next, we'll move on to some reminders for TURA planners. If you need to update your address or phone number in ePlace, this can be done directly in your account by going to account management, scrolling down to contact information, hovering over actions and clicking edit. If you need any additional help with that, feel free to reach out to me. And to change your name, email the help desk. The email is here, linked here on this slide. And to change your email, fill out the form linked here. The form is also available in ePlace, so it's another place where you can find it. Please make sure your application or renewal matches what you want to apply for. We've had a couple of cases where individuals checked off the EMS or RC option, for example, when they did not actually want to apply for EMS or RC credentials. If you find that you're unable to make changes to your application, please contact me. If you are a general practice planner and your status is about to expire, we will remove you from the list of active general practice planners posted on MassDEP's website. So you should consider renewing at least 3 months prior to your expiration date to avoid this. The system will also send you an automated email 3 months before your expiration date reminding you to renew. Also, if you find that your name is missing from the posted list of general practice planners, please let me know. And lastly, if you have attended or plan to attend an external webinar, training session, conference, or other event not held by the TURA program and want to potentially obtain CE credits for it, the CE credit pre-approval form can be found through this link or on the TURA webpage. Just complete it and email it to me along with information about the event, such as an agenda. If you need to self-disclose a violation or are working with a company that needs to self-disclose a violation, contact enforcement program staff, that's Rebecca and me, so that we can provide you with the correct information and necessary forms. And that's it for me. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me or drop them in the chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Leonie. I don't see anything in the chat yet. So if you want, you can. Oh, Sandra has a question about applying 3 months in advance. Go ahead, Sandra. I don't know if Sandra is able to unmute herself, but in the meantime, it looks like Kelly has a question. If we renew early, does the renewal date move backwards?
It does not. You will maintain your renewal date, even if you renew early.
Okay, and Sandra said when she applied 1 month in advance, Walter dated her certificate earlier. Is that, Sandra, if that's for a current approval, reach out to Leonie via email so she can make sure that what's on your certificate matches what we have in the system. Looks like, is there a preferred number of significant figures for production ratio reporting? That's from Chris Christic. Production ratio reporting. Usually that's actually I'll defer that one to Lynn. You want to answer that one, Lynn?
So let's see. The multiple levels of TURA account access? Is that what you're
No.
referring to?
Nope, there's one in the Q&A from Chris Christic that says, is there a preferred number of significant figures for production ratio reporting? So like 1.5.
Yeah, I'll just stick in. So like if I calculate my production ratio and it's 0.88, do you want me to put 0.88 or 0.9, or what if it's
No,
0.886? Do you want, I'm just
Sure.
wondering what form you folks like to see it in.
It would 0.88 would be preferable to 0.9. Thank you. That was a good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So to clarify, 2 to 2 decimal points
Yes.
is what your preferred reporting would be.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
There's a question from Patrick Carew. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. Apologies, I'm new to TURA reporting, but it sounds like there's multiple different levels of TURA account access. Can someone go over those briefly? I'll be responsible for TURA reporting and planning. Okay, so Patrick, if you're representing a facility and you're reporting for the facility, you can file a report. We do have TUR planning abilities. You would need to be certified to be a TUR planner. You can either get certified as a limited practice or general practice. For more specifics on that, you can talk to Leonie directly.
Thanks, Rebecca.
And Bill Judd, Walter always dated my certificate with the same date, never dated it early, even when I was early. Yeah, Bill, that's how that's supposed to work. All right. Okay. That's everybody. All right. So, everyone, now we get to do the how to use EDP training. I'm gonna share my screen, and it's been revamped since last time. Hopefully, it's a little more helpful. It will be completely different though. So let's get started. Toxic Use Reduction Act TURA online reporting. In case anyone is not aware, reports are due on or before July 1st. Before we get started, some context for everyone. If you have TURA online filing questions, please contact TURA program at mass.gov. If you have an EDP issue, I think it's actually TURA.program. Sorry about that, folks. There's a period. If you have an EDP issue, please contact the help desk directly, specifically if you have a problem with your username or password. Their phone numbers here. And if you have a question when you are doing your EDP filing, we do recommend you send it to the general mailbox, just in case, someone's in a meeting, someone's out for the day, you get an answer. But you can always reach out directly to Leonie and myself as well. For OTA, TURI, and EPA, OTA has a handy phone number and a web link direct to them. TURI also has their webpage and phone number, and we have the link for TRI Help Desk for EPA. They do still answer the email. They also have the CDX Help Desk phone number, which intermittently works if you have a problem, and then the processing center link is there as well. Okay, so we're ready to file. We're going to talk about what type of information you want to have on hand, EDP functionality, go through some EDP step-by-step navigation, and then talk about how to amend an EDP. So information that you want to have on hand that is required are your EDP credentials. That's your username, your password. Sometimes that's your nickname. Your MassDEP issued facility ID. Your facility ID number is a unique identifier. It's not your TRI ID. It's not your EPA ID. It's a 6-digit, most of the time, facility number. And then you're also going to need your company TIN number or FEIN number. What we recommend you have on hand are previous year's filings with your noted changes, the online filing tips, the Form S instructions and appendices, and the Form R instructions. We will give you links to all of those after this presentation. So, as a PSA to everybody, remember, only file if you have to. Ask yourself, do you have over 10 FTEs? Are you using a listed chemical? And are you using the listed chemical over threshold? Reporting on chemicals that are below threshold, or if your FTEs are below 10, could result in an invoice being automatically generated. We do have a catch system in place for folks that are reporting and a chemical is actually below threshold. You'll receive an email from yours truly. So to prevent that email, double check your numbers, look on the chemical list. All right, so we're going to get started. We're going to talk about how to navigate to EDP, how to log in, and how to locate those TURA forms. So there's a couple of different ways to navigate EDP. This is the best one. If you go to www.mass.gov, this link will bring you to a TURA page in the TURA set of subpages on MassDEP. On this page, if you are an expert, you can click right into logging into the online filing. If you're a little bit newer or you have a question, you can click on the how to use EDP online filings. Also on this page are a bunch of other links and forms like the non-applicability form, the facility closure form, the TURA tips. There's countless other ones that you can get that are accessible there. All right, your other option is to go directly to the EDP login page. That direct link is here. Before you log in, I want to point out a couple things. So existing users, you want to actually use your username and password, log in that section marked in red. If you've forgotten your password, please use the reset password or get login help. Nobody on DEP staff has access to your specific login information. So if you need help, we're not able to help you. Only our IT staff have the ability to do that. If you're a new user, you want to look at that box labeled in blue that says new user. You're going to register, get a username and password. It takes approximately 10 minutes. It's like any other online platform you would register for. If you feel that you're experiencing some issues, we do have the EDP browser requirements for PCs. Take a look. If your browser is not compatible, you might need to use something else. Our IT staff is doing a pretty good job keeping up with system requirements, so you shouldn't have a problem. But if you find that you do, I'd recommend checking there first. Also on this page, noted in orange, is a location where you will see announcements from the web page. So check this before you log in, just to make sure that you are using a system when it's up and running properly. If there's an issue or if it's down, trying to log in and then do any of your filings will be stressful for you and probably will not work the way you want. And we'd like to avoid that. All right. So you've logged in. How do you find those forms? Well, once you log in, you're going to go to that green bar across the top of the page. Click on the Forms button, and it will drop down to a list of form filings. You're looking for toxics and hazards. Once you find that and click on it, it will open up a list of forms. Toxics and hazards is the last one at the bottom of the page, so you're going to want to scroll down. And you are looking for Toxics Use Reduction Act TURA report. I'm going to pause here for a minute just so that everybody sees. There is actually a new option on this page, and that is for trade secret filers. Those will be coming in electronically this year. So if we'll talk about that later, or we might actually not talk about that specifically for you guys in this training, but there are 3 forms. Make sure you choose the right one. And to start your filing packet, you're going to click on the Start Transaction button. For those of you that see this button, it is represent business. In the majority of cases, you want to click no and then continue. I've never seen this form. There's very few that do. It's an older setup form, so if you do see it, continue to click no and continue so that you don't have an issue. Okay, so let's talk about the TURA filing process in the forms packet. There is a set of forms that build, and the form system is linear. You will see a pre-form, then the form as cover sheet pages. There's sections 1 and 2, section 3, and section 4. And then you'll start the form as pages, which are pages sections 1 and 2. After that, you'll proceed to the state-only form RA, a fee worksheet, a signature page, and the submittal page. So each of these bold sections are will be noted on the top of the page, and then the subsections will each have a description. So each subsection, like section 1 and 2, general information FTE, is an actual separate page from the other cover sheet sections. So we're ready to go, and we're going to take a quick sidebar to talk about EDP and how it works. I know that a lot of people have encountered the quirks in the system, so let's hope that this helps everybody deal with some of those and eliminate some questions. So, as Walter has always said, the EDP reporting system is designed in a linear fashion, and it builds your forms based on answers from prior sections. And it will pre-populate information. The goal was that it is designed to save users data entry time. The downside is, if you realize you've made a mistake in the filing, in some cases, you have to return to the beginning to fix that mistake. So for instance, if you get to the fee worksheet and you realize that you've selected the wrong FTEs number, you're going to have to go back to that form as cover sheet section 1 or 2 and change your answer. The plus side of that is the system does save those answers on each of the subsequent pages. So all you have to do is revalidate them. So the pre-form. On the pre-form, you're going to enter your facility's tax ID number without dashes. Enter your facility's DEP facility ID number. Some of you facilities have lower numbers. There's one facility that I'm aware of that has a 3-digit number. But the majority of facilities, this should be a 6-digit number. And then you want to select your reporting year. The trade secret default is no, and for everybody, please do not change that, including those of you who are trade secret filers. Once you've entered that information, you can click next and your form packet will build. If you enter any of these numbers either in reverse, such as you reverse your TIN and facility number, you'll get an error message. If your TIN or facility ID number doesn't match what we have on file, please stop here and email us so that we make sure we check and make any corrections as needed. If and when your pre-form generates a transaction, the first thing you're going to see is this transaction overview page. This will show the transaction ID number that is assigned to your report, as well as your facility ID number across the top of the page. And from here, your forms will build out. There are some transaction overview page specific buttons. So print allows you to print a copy of the filing packet. Please note, if you click the print button before the report has been submitted, you will see a watermark across it that says draft. Unfortunately, I'm aware it does obliterate some of the answers to questions. I'm still waiting for IT to adjust that, and until they do, it is as it is. Delete allows you to delete an in-process transaction only. This cannot be undone, so please be careful, especially if you've made it all the way through. Share. This allows you to share transactions with other users. So if you are the person that is not able to sign, but you are prepping the packet, you would use the share button. If you experience an IT issue and you might want to troubleshoot it with myself or Leonie, you can actually share that transaction with us using our nicknames. And exit. Exit allows you to leave a transaction and return to it later. So if you're not sitting down in one setting to enter the entire report and submit it, that exit button will bring you back to the list of forms and allow you to log out and
Right.
come back into it later. Nope.
Hello.
Was there a question? Okay.
No.
Advancing forms. There are two ways to do it, and both work. So whichever preference works for you, please go ahead and use the one that works. I personally prefer using the next button when I return to this page, but other folks like to click on the actual form name itself. You can do either. Both will bring you into the name of the form that you're looking to go to. There are two different form progress bars on the packet. The first one runs along the left-hand side and it's marked in red. That checks the list of forms that you've created and whether or not they've been validated and completed. So green check means that you've filled out all of the required data elements on that page and that the page has been error checked indexed. A gray dash means that that form has not been through the error check process. So you might have started it and saved your answers and exited it, but it hasn't been validated through the system yet. Once you've answered all of the questions on all of the pages and validated them all of these lines should have a green check. If you're missing one, that means that you've skipped a page somehow and you need to return to that one. The second status bar is across the top of the page and it's marked in blue, and that tracks the status of the packet, the signature, and the submittal. As you make it through each packet, the caret, the little green caret underneath, will advance, and it will actually turn the arrow to a darker gray. So once you complete the forms packet and you've proceeded to the signature page, that will turn gray. Once you've signed it and done your forms, you're proceeding to the submit page. And once we've received it, that'll also turn to gray. As many of you know, Walter has always told you that the screens are blocks and screens. They're actually blocks and pages. It's not much of a difference in the terminology. Each page that loads will have unique blocks for certain amounts of data. Those allow for users that have more than one chemical to report or more than one production unit to fill out that information. And this is an example of what a unique block on the page looks like. So the page is the overall view of the screen that you're seeing, and each unique block can be edited or updated to add additional chemicals. There are page-specific navigation buttons as well on each page. At the top of the heading above your company information, you should see an error check button, a save button, a print button, and an exit button. Error check will check the checks the form for missing data on the form that you're on. Save saves entries to the data on the page that you're on. Print allows you to print only the page that you're on. And exit exits the screen you're on without affecting any prior input. It does not save the data that has been added or changed. So if you're trying to leave a page and you've made changes, be sure to save it before you exit. Page and block specific navigation. To enter data in the data fields on the pages and blocks, you'll see individual buttons on those to save and open data fields. Sometimes you'll see edit and delete, or update and cancel. So to open one, you'd want to click the edit button. Once you've entered all of the necessary data, you can click update. If you accidentally create a block that you don't need, you can hit cancel and it should close it. If you enter something in error, you can click delete and it should delete it for you. In some cases, you'll also need to add more than one unique data block. Depending on what type of unique block you're adding, you'll see a button for it. So if you're trying to add chemicals, you should see an add chemicals button. If you're looking to add a new production unit, you should see that as well, or add process codes. If you delete or change, when you're deleting or changing a page, they are connected to one another. So that deletion can impact the entire submittal. In those cases, you will get this pop-up message. Let's another brief pause. Make sure your pop-up blocker is off for EDP or you might get stuck. This is just asking that you allow the system to revalidate any of the subsequent or prior forms. Once you want to say yes, it will go through that and you can advance. There's some page-specific error checks. So if you forget to error check or error check in next, you can either do that at the top of the page or at the bottom of the page. If you forgot to update before you hit the error check button, like I frequently do, you will get a list of error messages in red at the bottom of the page. Those messages do try to tell you where you forgot to save that information or where the information is blank. Sometimes you just need to go and click update to save that information. Other times you might have to return because you skipped a question. Once you've filled in all the necessary fields, click the error check and next or error check button again, and you can advance. How to exit a form. If you clicked that exit button, you will be prompted with this little pop-up box that says, do you want to save your changes? Yes, no, or cancel. Yes will save the changes and will affect relationships to all the subsequent pages. No will not save any changes and will exit the form packet. And if you clicked on that button in error, you can click cancel and it'll bring you back to the forms themselves. There are some miscellaneous quirks. Some of them are very new this year, so I'm going to point these out to you just as please pay attention and try not to use these. So EDP no longer allows the use of special characters or many special characters. I don't have a full list yet. It's been kind of intermittent, but it no longer allows for the use of the ampersand, the pound sign, and the asterisk. It appears that the percent sign is still working, but this does carry over into your comment sections. So try to spell out the words if you can. Abbreviate as necessary so that you can fit into those spaces. If you need to submit multiple transactions for a single facility, for instance, if you need to file reports for prior years, please wait a minimum of 1 hour between each submission. The system does try to build reports based on what it was reported in the prior year. When you submit them too close together, it does not pre-populate the information, which means that it makes it harder for you because you have to recreate everything in each transaction. But it also means that sometimes you're not presented with appropriate forms. So in order to avoid that, please wait that minimum 1 hour. If you're working on a filing and you experience some kind of unexpected behavior, please contact the TURA program and report the issue or request assistance. So sometimes if your page gets stuck and doesn't want to move forward, we've had a couple of weird quirks tied to those special characters where if there's a special character in the chemical name on our end, you get stuck. So if you're using a chemical that I believe we fixed them all, but if you're using one of those chemicals that we missed, you might get stuck in a transaction from no fault of your own. So if you reach out to us, we can quickly fix that and get you moving along. All right. So before I go back to the step-by-step instructions, it looks like I've got a bunch of things in the chat. Is there anything that anybody needs me to answer or go back to before I keep moving along?
Rebecca, I think that Bill Judd would like to raise his hand, but he wasn't able to do that. So he might want to speak.
Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah.
Hi, Rebecca. Yeah, I can't figure out how to do the raise hand function. It looks like you guys have it disabled. It's just not there under React. But anyway, when you were talking about sharing transactions, one of the issues I've seen in the past is where consultants set expiration dates. And my experience has been you should never, ever set an expiration date, and that maintains the historical availability for those reports for people who come after you, such as me, when I get a new client, that kind of thing. It's just a point I wanted to make, but I don't think we can raise our hand, right?
I believe Karen put in a comment. Oh, Pam raised her hand, so I
I
guess
believe if you
guess it
click
worked.
on not the little arrow next to react, but on the heart itself, do you see? I know I've seen people use the other reactions. Raise hand is one of the options there.
Got it. I feel a little stupid right now.
No,
Thank you.
no need. It's not obvious. It's yeah, because it has that little up caret too. But it's under if you click the button itself. I don't know why they have two different ways to click on the same thing.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Bill,
Thank you.
it keeps advancing and getting slightly different, so that's not on you. I wouldn't even know where to find it either. All right. Is there anybody else? I see more in the chat, Lynn. Or is everything good?
I think everything is okay. Does anyone else want to unmute themselves and ask a question right now?
A couple people noted that there is a character limit for when you're setting a name. Do you know what that is?
The character limit for chemicals?
I think for the name.
The name of what? The facility,
Sandra or Melanie, if you want to respond.
Please.
Note field has limit on how much you can type.
The note field has a limit of 250.
I had this happen actually with the source registration just like a month ago. We couldn't figure out why it wouldn't validate, and it said there was 200 character limit, and we had gone over the 200 and we didn't realize it. It was in an explanation part. It wasn't just on the field name, and we couldn't get. And then I realized I started deleting, and it, usually when you delete it, it tells you how many characters you're at. But what I did is I pasted into Word to see the characters. But you couldn't tell. We couldn't figure out why it wasn't validating. I think Sandra said the same thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So anyway, that's what happened. Yeah, unstuck immediately after shortening the message, but it was in a certain spot on the form. So wherever there's character limit listed, you have to make sure you're in that, and it's not going to tell you.
So EDP is pretty old at this point. They're starting to look for ways to replace it. With that being said, we worked with our IT team this year to add a lot of new validation or validation that had kind of fallen away, and we added labels to fields where we could that will tell you that they have a character limit. So all of the planning page, if you're doing a standard plan, all three of those comment back boxes, B1, B2, and B3, have a 250 character limit, which is the largest we could make it. And section 5 comment section has it. And if you are a person that is only doing wastewater treat chemicals, you'll see a section 4 field box, and that also has the 250 characters. I think the comments section on the section 3 for below threshold chemicals also has a 250 character limit. We expanded the character limits for those as far as we could. And I know they do not have a counter. That's not something that we've been able to add. We're hoping that's a new feature that when they replace EDP, that'll exist for us. But the best way to check if your character, if you're stuck on a page and the character limit might be the problem, is to copy it and paste it into Word and just see your spaces. One thing to note is the system is kind of weird in that section. If you make a list as opposed to writing sentences, it counts every space after that list where you could have typed a word as actual characters. So try to avoid doing lists. If you're going to do a list, don't do them down the page. Just separate them by periods. Anybody else?
And Rebecca, Kelly Winston said, but you can't copy paste from the instructions in the EDP if you use Word.
Right, you can't paste it in, but you can paste it back in, it says. Yeah, so you would just have to look at what you want to delete and then delete those words. But it'll give you an idea of where your number count is. All right. So I'm going to move on and we're going to go back to the step-by-step forms. You guys actually covered something that's going to be covered in a couple later slides, so that's helpful, but thanks for bringing that up now. Okay. So you've made it past the pre-form, and the first page you're on is the facility information page. This is what it's going to look like for everybody when it loads. minus the facility information being different. So on this page, I'm going to take it section by section. Section 1, I want you to stop and validate your company information. This is going to pre-populate based on what we have in the system for you. If your name has changed and it's changed within last year, please reach out to us so that we make sure we update that. If anything's wrong on your address or your zip code, please also reach out to us. What we have on file is what populates there, so if we don't know to correct it, we cannot. Reach out to the TURA program, and this has the correct one. With that information, we'll update it for you. And if you stop here, you're probably going to have to delete from the transaction you've created and start a new one. I don't know that it auto corrects, but at least you didn't get too far into it. This also, it asks if you're making a trade secret claim. For the majority of you, I think actually for all of you, even if you are a trade secret filer, you want to answer this as no, because you'll be submitting a sanitized form. There is a new question G, or a rephrasing of question G, and for folks that are doing trade secret, it asks you whether or not your transaction is sanitized or unsanitized. I actually think this has changed entirely, so the only answer you can actually say is sanitized. But I'm not 100% sure based on that screenshot. Okay. Section 1 continues with, are all chemicals included in this toxic use report only used to treat waste or control pollution? The majority of you are going to answer no to this question. For those of you that answer yes, you will be presented with a slightly different form packet, and in this PowerPoint, I do cover those slides quickly. But those of you that know who you are know already what that looks like. The program does look at this, so if you answer this in error or it's different than prior years, we usually will reach out to you. So try to only answer the way you should so that you don't have to fix a forms packet. Your tax ID number and your TRI number should also populate. If you notice an error with one of those, please reach out to us. The tax ID number should be fine because you entered it on the pre-form, but if it's not, let us know. For the TRI number, it's important that you give it to us, especially for those users that file federally. If there's a disconnect between what we expect your TRI number to be and what you report to EPA with, we don't receive that information in the data flow from them. So we would reach out to you saying we're missing information because it doesn't connect through the mapping. Guess this is a slightly different presentation than I did, or I thought I was doing. So you're also going to want to answer the FTE question. You can use the EPA guidance on how to calculate your FTEs. That will be in the presentation version that I send out. Please be careful with this selection, because if you do select the wrong thing, that does impact your fee worksheet and you would have to come all the way back to the beginning. Once you've answered those questions, you want to click on either the error check at the top of the page, or in this case, error check and next, to go to the next page. So a brief sidebar for those of you that did answer yes on the waste treatment and pollution control question. Your forms packet is going to be slightly different than the others. You will not see a production unit page, so the Form S cover sheet section 4, and you will not see the other Form S chemical use by production unit screen. That will actually move into the part of that will move into the chemical use facility wide, so the layout will be slightly different. There, I knew I had the FTEs somewhere. Okay. All right, so after you've answered your FTEs, you're going to move to the Form S cover sheet, section 3, which is for chemicals that you reported in your last reporting year that are not reportable this year. And I'm gonna go. If you have to report on that, you need to click on Edit, which will open up the data fields for you to enter a CAS number, You want to select your explanation as to why the chemical is not reportable. You can select multiple if applicable. For those of you that are saying that a chemical was substituted, if you check that off, you will be required to put in the CAS number for the substituted chemical in section A5. Anybody that clicks on other, section A4 comment section will populate, and you have to type in something there. The validation on this has been fixed, so you might get stuck if you don't do that. Once you've entered that first block of information, you want to click Update. For those of you that have more than one chemical that is not reportable this year, once you've updated that first block, click the Add Chemicals button, and that will give you a second block to add a different chemical. For those of you that don't have any chemicals that were not reportable this year, you want to click Error Check and Next without editing, and that'll proceed to the next page for you. As Walter always said, be sure to document your calculations and source material. So if you said something was below threshold, make sure you have that documented somewhere. So when you are asked about it, or if somebody comes out to inspect your facility, you have an answer and you can say, I didn't report it because XYZ. All right, the next page is the Form S cover sheet, section 4. This is an overview of what it looks like. It's also known as the production unit screen. So I'm going to take that in individual pieces. So each production unit is going to need to be individually edited. Before you do that, I would recommend that you look at each production unit and check the 3 things marked in yellow: the description of the process, the description of the product, and the appropriate description for the unit of product. If those are no longer valid for a production unit that was in use last year, you will need to make a new production unit. The fields that you are able to edit for a production unit are the yes, no, in use, and correcting a NAICS code. So you can edit it and remove a NAICS, add a new NAICS, change the NAICS. So I'd recommend you scroll down the page if you have multiple production units, look at each description. You can edit their in use yes or no. For those that are yes, check your NAICS. For those that are no, the NAICS will usually clear out from prior years. So if you had something that wasn't in use last year and is in use this year, you might have to re-enter the NAICS. Once you've done that, before you start adding your chemicals, I know this is going to sound counterintuitive to a lot of you, review your list of pre-populated process codes. If you need to add more of them, I recommend adding those first. So you can click on the Add Process Codes button that's marked in blue, and what it will do is open a new blank box for you. This field, you can either type your process code. I would recommend against it. The system is a lot more locked down on these because we've had some issues with hand-entered process codes causing issues when the report tries to finally submit to us. So if you use the select button, that will give you a list of all of the appropriate codes that are available. And by double clicking on it, it will populate the answer into that box and then hit update and it'll add it to the list. If you do this first, it will add that list add to the list of process codes for all production units. So you will then be able to just add chemicals and select the appropriate ones. That's why I'm suggesting you kind of go out of order here. Makes it a little bit more streamlined for everybody when you're doing the entry. All right, so once you've added all the process codes you want to use, go ahead and click Edit. Actually, you don't have to edit to add process codes, just as an FYI. Once you want to add your chemicals, you're going to click Edit, enter the CAS number without dashes. Check off any of the applicable process codes that you want to apply, and update. If you need to add more chemicals, there is an Add Chemical button. Click the Add Chemical button and you will get a new block of blank block to add things to. You can only edit one block at a time, so if that first one is, if you didn't save it before, it will actually clear out the chemical name. You'll have to go back to it. So click edit, enter that information, select your process codes, update, and then you can keep adding chemicals as you go down the list. If you find that you need to add a new production unit, once you finish updating the ones that you already have, click add a production unit and it'll give you a new production unit with the ability to assign your own number to it. And then you can say, yes, it's in use, describe the process and the product. For those specifically, if you're adding a new one, please do not use the ampersand. That will cause a problem and you'll get stuck on this page and possibly have to delete the transaction, which would be painful for everybody. Because until it actually writes into the system, I can't fix it. So it gets stuck. Once you've gotten all of your production unit information in, you want to click on error check and next. And if there's any missing fields or boxes that aren't checked, you're going to get that error message and it's going to try to point you where you are. In this screenshot, I forgot to click on process code. There is usually the error message at the bottom, but there is sometimes, and hopefully more frequently than before, you will see this red box that kind of points you to the field that you missed. Go back up, click on edit, make any corrections, click on update to save those corrections, and then error check and next until you are error-free on the page. Like Walter always says, if you're making a new production unit, document your calculations and source material. All right, so now we're going to get to the Form S sections 1 through 3, and sometimes, if you are wastewater treat only, section 4. Be sure to scroll down to complete all unique blocks. You will get a unique block per chemical on this screen. So before you start filling anything out, I would strongly recommend you scroll down and make sure that every chemical you think you entered in the production units has a form here. If you're missing one, that generally means that you didn't enter it on the production unit page, so you want to go back a screen. And you would do that by exiting and returning to the list of the transaction list and selecting that page. If you did add it in the production unit screen and it's still not here, definitely reach out. So each chemical is going to be its own unique block, which will need to be edited and updated. At the top of the page, in section 1, we've added a lot of hovers to make life a little bit easier for you. Those hovers are denoted by blue question marks that I've circled here. And if you hover over them, it'll actually populate a box with a description of what that data field is. I put the description of manufacture, process, and otherwise used here for you guys to see. They are really long and a little bit wordy. I do apologize, but we wanted you to have the most information. It does tell you the thresholds as well for each field if you need them. So when you're entering your data, be sure to input the chemical usage numbers in the proper fields. If you manufactured it, put it in manufactured, don't put it in processed or otherwise used. That's my only request, because when we come back around to it, if somebody audits you and there's a conflict, we will ask questions and you might have to fix your filing. So at the top of the page, the goal, as Pam mentioned and Leonie mentioned, and Jack mentioned, is balance. So we're seeking balance between what you've manufactured, processed, or otherwise used. If those are added together, they should equal generated as byproduct or shipped in or as product. However, we do understand that that's not always the case for everybody. So what do you do when they don't match? Well, you proceed to section 2 and you try to make them match or equal using the generated as byproduct, shipped in or as product, recycled on site, consumed or transformed, held in inventory, or other amounts. But sometimes they still don't equal, and that's okay. If that's the case, you will get this pop-up box that tells you that your mass balance does not exist, and it does tell you that you will need to provide a written explanation in section 5. Section 5 is not on this page, so if you say okay, that's going to give you the question F in section 2 that needs to be checked as yes. Usually, if you've answered okay, the system will automatically answer yes for you. And then we proceed to section 3, chemical use in waste treatment units. So there are going to be quite a few of you that have production units that are waste treatment, but that's not your sole production. So you would answer this question based on how much of each chemical you're using for waste treatment. If you indicated on the Form S cover sheet section 1 that all chemicals are only used to treat waste in section 3A, is fixed as yes. In addition, there will be no production units to report, like I mentioned before, and you guys will see. So everybody that's not wastewater treat only, once you've completed that page and you've updated it, you want to error check it next for each individual block. In this case, I only had one block, so I was able to proceed. You'd have to update each block, and then once you've completed all the blocks, error check it next.
Okay. Rebecca?
Yes, Lynn.
You have a question regarding your example.
Which one?
Specifically for this example, antimony compounds. The byproduct is reported as the element, correct? He goes on to ask, hold on. This then balances in section 2 using amount of chemical compound.
Yeah, I used so the antimony compounds, and this is my downside for using antimony compounds, which is the 1000 number, CAS number. I was trying to make it easier, but yeah, you would have to, if it's a compound, you're going to use amount in chemical compounds. I just put in numbers to make it balanced. I didn't put them in the right field, so you are correct. Don't mind that. That was, I will make sure I update the screenshots and use a different chemical going forward. That was an easy one just for me to type in fast to get the right screenshots for you guys. But I'm going to make a note so I fix that. Okay. So if you forget to click update for a block of a certain chemical, you're going to get everything in red, even if you have answers, and you'll get an error message saying your response is required to continue. That just means you forgot to hit update. So click that, it will save the answers and you can proceed. I had more slides for that section. Sorry, guys. On the presentation that I'll send out, I will have a couple more slides for the wastewater treat for folks that are doing that. You will actually see a section 4, which will be your version of section 5. It's a typo field. And for those folks that are doing wastewater treat, you will start on this page and it will be blank. So the first thing you'll have to do is enter your CAS number and then answer the chemical information. And you'll also see an add chemicals button at the bottom of the page, which will allow you to add any of your wastewater treatment chemicals. Sorry, that's not in this PowerPoint. And as a reminder, always document your calculations and your source material. All right, so we're going to look at the Form S sections 4 and 5. For those of you that are doing a non-wastewater treat packet, you will see this page. So your first question is asking you about the quantity of chemical use. So select the correct toggle that covers the amount of use for that chemical. You're going to note that it will have each chemical by production unit number. So you want to accurately report how much of that chemical was used in each production unit. And then question D, which is really the next question, asks you, did your use increase or decrease by 10% or more compared with the prior reporting year? If you answer yes, you want to enter process codes. So you can enter up to 3 process codes in fields E1, F1, and G1. To see the available process codes, if you click on that blue select box, you will get a list of available process codes to select. Once you've selected a process code, you need to indicate whether it was an increase or a decrease. It only allows alpha characters now, and I believe it only is locked for I and D. So we had a couple of folks that were using one instead of I, and that made a lot of problems. That's been fixed. Please try not to enter other characters because then I will be contacting you to get those fixed. If you entered one process code, you will need to enter at minimum one technique code. Those technique codes are in 3A, B, and C. You can enter up to 3 per process code, and you can see the available technique codes by clicking on the select button next to it. It's important to note that the process codes and the technique codes are the same with those select buttons between your answers in section D and I. The pick lists are the same. Your answers don't necessarily have to be the same. After answering whether or not you have process codes, if you've answered no, you would proceed right to H. And H asks whether or not byproduct generated for the chemical was less than 1% of use in the production unit. If you answer yes, you're going to skip section I and go right to section 5. If you answer no, you're going to go to question I and then answer that whether or not your byproduct was a 10% increase or decrease, 10% or more increase or decrease. If you say no, you're going to also proceed to section 5, but if you say yes, you're going to add those process codes and technique codes. Okay, when you get to section 5 description, it does now say maximum of 250 characters allowed, and please do not copy and paste, and it is in red so you can see. It does not have a field counter. IT does not have a way to add that on. That was something that I requested as well, and as of now, no luck. If something changes, I will make sure that that gets added in because I do know that's something that it's a pain for everybody. So as I mentioned before, try to go across with your answers instead of down. If you're doing a list, just separate them either by commas or periods, or if you want to put a 1, 2, 3, however you want to distinguish them, that works for us. This is where you want to put any comments or explanations in relation to your byproduct or your production unit. If you had a non-routine occurrence, if there's anything additional that you need us to know. If not, technically you can get away with not putting anything in this field. I know a lot of folks will say no or not applicable. That's fine too. Whatever you want to put there, we do get these comments as part of our querying of the reporting system. So if there's something there that's we need to know, that's a good place to put it, or the best place to put it. Once you've entered that information, once again, click on the arrow check and next, and document your calculations and source material. All right, so now you're at the state-only Form RA. For those of you that are filing for a federal chemical with TRI, you will likely not get a Form R or A for any of those chemicals. The system has gotten better at, we have a pick list that's better to show or eliminate duplicative reporting. In cases that you do get presented with it, we do ask you to fill it out, and we apologize for the inconvenience. If you can give us, send us an email letting us know you're having a problem with that one or you got a duplicate, that helps us to target some of the fixes in the off season. Please note, DEP does not use EPA chemical category identifiers like the N numbers. So if we have a chemical category that's separate, you would have to report that here. When you're making your decision between a Form R and A, facilities are only able to use a Form A if the total chemical use is greater than 1 million pounds. It's less than, hold on. Companies must use the Form R if their total chemical use is greater than 1 million pounds, or if they generate more than 500 pounds of TURA byproduct, or the chemical is a PBT. So the Form A can only be used if the chemical is less than 1 million pounds. They generate less than 500 pounds of byproduct, and it is not a PBT. So we have a lot of folks that get the first two right, but then they forget to check to see if it's a PBT, and they'll fill out a Form A, and then we have to go back. So if you're not sure about your chemical, double check. Pull down the chemical list, take a quick look, and save yourself a step. So once you get to this, make your determination. Are you filling out a Form R? If you say yes, you'll see all of the following Form R sections. If you say no, you will get a Form A. And the Form A is just a state-only Form A. You check box, you check that answer. It does remind you that it cannot be filled out for PBT chemicals or compounds. It does remind you of the criteria that also was listed in the section above. So please double check yourself, and you can proceed with an error check in next. It's what is interesting is the Form RA is the only page that doesn't have scroll to see each individual chemical. There's actually a Form R or A page per chemical. It's the only thing that I'll say there. So if you've decided you're filling out a Form R and you say yes, the first section you're going to see is section 4. And that is going to ask you the 2-digit code from the TURA instruction page for the maximum amount of toxic chemical on site at any time during a calendar year. If you don't know that number off the top of your head, which I would imagine most of you do not, click on the select button, choose the appropriate code by double clicking on it, and it'll fill in the information and move on to the next section. Sections 5.2 and sections 5 and 6. 5 pertains to material on-site, and 6 pertains to off-site transfers. So as you go through, if those data fields do apply to you, please enter information in them. You can enter a 0 if you didn't click check if not applicable. So say if you only have fugitive emissions, but you don't have stack emissions, you'd enter your fugitive emission numbers and you'd enter your stack as 0. For each set of those, you'll see a check if not applicable. If those don't apply, just check those and keep moving down the list. For section 6, it's your total quantity transferred to POTWs is 6.1A. And 6.2 is a total quantity transfer to all other offsite locations. So treatment, disposal, recycling, energy recovery, etc., except what's sent to POTWs. So just make sure that you're not double counting by combining those numbers. Section 7A is the only one that has an update section. So the first thing I would recommend you do is skip this section and go back to it. But once you get there, if section 7A needs to be answered, click on edit. If it's not applicable, check if not applicable and then click update. If it is applicable, you have to enter a general waste stream code. You can use the select button to see your media options, A, L, S, or W. Once you've entered a media option, you have a waste treatment method sequence character codes. You can add up to 8 of those by clicking the select buttons. You'll get a populated list of available options, and you would need to select your efficiency. Once you've answered one of those, click update, and then you can add more treatment method codes as needed, following the same process. For section 7B, which is why I say skip section 7A and then go back to it after you did B and C. Those also have the quick check if not applicable boxes, so you don't have to edit. Those do have a select button to give you a list of appropriate energy recovery method codes if those are applicable, and recycling methods also if those are applicable. And you can use those drop-down lists, or if you know them off the top of your head, feel free to enter. Just be mindful of data entry. Don't add any extra spaces, or try to use all capitals, because in some instances it will not accept your answer if you don't match it to what the system's expecting. So which is why we recommend clicking it off the actual list. Okay, so section 8. The numbers for this reporting year are going to be entered in column B. Numbers from the prior year are column A. Numbers for next year are column C, and numbers for 2 years out are in column D. So section 8 is supposed to be, like Lanny mentioned, a summary of what you've reported in the prior sections 5, 6, 7. You want to line those up to put your answers in the correct fields. And the goal is to avoid double counting. And the list, once added all together, 8.1a all the way to 8.7, if added together, should equal your byproduct. In the instance where you've had a release to the environment, a catastrophic event, 8.8 allows you to add that extra poundage there. Sometimes that's helping to give you your numbers. If you had your facility engaging in source reduction activities, if you answered no, you should be able to proceed with an error check and next. If you answer yes, you will need to enter source reduction activity codes. There's also a list of those seen in blue, and you will need to identify if you've entered one source activity, at minimum one source method code. You can add up to 3, and those are also visible in red. As always, document your calculations and source materials. And now we've made it to the fee worksheet. So everybody's fee worksheet should look like this. And we're going to dig in a little deeper in a couple sections. So your facility information should be correct. If something's wrong there, let me know. For full-time equivalent answers, that is going to populate your base fee amount in box F. If you notice that your base fee amount or your total are significantly higher than what you expected, take a look at the chart above that shows you the FTEs amounts, and you can figure out if you had made a mistake back at the beginning. For chemicals that are not high hazard or low hazard, so just your everyday hazardous chemical, it's going to count those. For those that are higher hazards, if you have them, it'll count them in that box. And for low hazard chemicals, it will count them there. Of note, low hazard chemicals are the only ones that you are not billed for. To calculate your filing cost, it is going to be the total of number of chemicals times $1,100 and then added to your base fee. If, however, you exceed the maximum fee allowed, you will just pay the maximum fee from that maximum fee column above. So if you're looking at line L, that should be the line that the amount that we would invoice you for. Payment is due 30 days after an invoice notice date has been, late payment would result in a $1,000 late fee that is mandated by Mass General Law, Chapter 21I. For those of you that are completing the forms on behalf of somebody, I want you to pause here. This is the certification statement. So if you are not the person that has to certify this information on behalf of the facility, this is where I would recommend that you share your transaction to them, have them review this page, check off the boxes, and complete the certification page at the bottom. The authorized signature should match the first and last names that are printed. When they don't, that's because somebody else actually is the person that checked and advanced this page. So we can see that because the authorized signature writes in based on who's logged into the account, as does the date. All of these fields, C, D, E, and F, are mandatory. So you will not be able to advance if you don't enter first name, last name, a position title, and an email address. You will get an error message. The late fee is not a penalty. The late fee is set by the legislature under Mass General Law, Chapter 21I, Section 19F. The department shall charge an additional administrative fee of $1,000 for failure to file a complete and accurate report by July 1st of the year following the use of the chemical, i.e. chemicals that are used in 2024 must be reported by July 1st of 2025. A late fee may also be added for failure to pay any fee pursuant to this section in a timely manner. Late fees are applied if the fee is not paid by the due date on the invoice. Once you've proceeded past the forms packet to the signature page, you can go back and fix things only by clicking on forms. For whoever is supposed to sign it, they need to check the signature box and type their name. The date auto writes in, so you cannot really edit that. And then they should click I accept. Then you proceeded to the submittal page. So TEP does not have the transaction until you submit this and it proceeds past and you get a confirmation page. You can send a confirmation email to more than just yourself. The system will autofill the owner of the transaction or the person who's submitting this transaction name, and you can put other people separated by a semicolon. You can submit in two places, either right at the top or at the bottom of the page. And once you do, it will come over to us and you should receive an automated confirmation email. If you're working on a filing and you experience an unexpected behavior, please contact the TURA program at mass.gov. All right, so that's how you've submitted your filing. Now we're going to move on to how do you amend a filing. TURA filers can amend their TURA filings as far back as 2016 to make corrections or revisions. Important for this year is that MassDEP staff will no longer be able to make revisions for filers. Everything must be done electronically. They have turned off the feature that allows us to do revisions for you. So paper revisions are no longer allowed. Unless there's a system issue, and those will be held until we get the system resolved and you can proceed electronically fixing it. Users looking to amend should log into their EDB account. And anybody who has had the transaction shared with them should be able to initiate the amend. This is new as opposed to last year, which was only the owner. Makes it a little bit easier, but it also makes it so that you want to be careful because even if the person was only able to view a transaction, they can now amend it. If this becomes a problem, we will start locking that down a little bit more, but right now everybody has the ability to initiate. There's also a new process in place to transfer ownerships of filings in the event that a transaction hasn't been shared before a person retires or leaves the company. If you need to initiate that process, please contact the TURA program at turaprogram@mass.gov and we'll get the process started. There is a form that you will need to fill out and have notarized, and then our IT staff will reassign transactions to you. So how do I find the transaction that I'm looking to amend? First thing you need to do is look in your recently submitted tab. That tab is only going to show transactions submitted in the past 90 days. Of note, if you submit a significant number of transactions, it might not show up there, even if it is in the past 90 days. So if it's on this page, great. If not, I can show you how else to find it. So you're going to look for that transaction number that was really important at the beginning, that will also show up in your email. Find the transaction number in question and amend it. Sometimes I find that it's really helpful to put a comment in with your transaction so that you know which one it is. I personally use notes for any of the transactions I share with the IT staff, and that helps both of us know which one I'm looking at. You can add, there's a limited space, but you can kind of identify what year it is. So find your transaction and click amend. For those of you that didn't find it on the recent submitted tab, maybe because it's past 90 days, or maybe because you've done so many transactions, it will show up on your archive submitted tab. To use this tab, the first thing you need to do is click show filter. It will expand to show all of these available filters. You can either use the ID field, which is the facility. You can toggle through status. You can search by a specific tracking ID, which is your transaction ID number. You can filter by form type. And you can use a start date, end date. I recommend, if you're using the transactions and you're filing for multiple programs like an AIR program and a TURA program, but you're only filing for one facility, to use the form type and then a start date. Start like a week before the transaction that you're looking for was submitted, and don't put an end date and click filter. It will give you a list, and you want to scroll down the list to find the appropriate transaction, and once again, click amend. After you click amend, it's going to take about an hour, and then that transaction should show up on your work in progress page. While I know that it should show up before that hour, I would recommend you wait. That's just the time frame that it takes the system to appropriately build that transaction for you. If you get started too early, you might have some kind of funky thing happen in your filing update, and that makes things a little bit more painful for you. So give it the hour. Once it shows up, you can start amending. So when you go to your work in progress tab, you'll find that new transaction. There will be a new transaction ID number associated with it. You'd have to click on the transaction, Toxic Use Reduction Act TURA reporting name, and that will open into the form packet. To find the form that you need to edit, you can click on it from the list and make any changes. If you have to edit starting at the beginning of the report, you will need to revalidate every pages. So say you started on the TURA Form S page 2, you should only have to revalidate your Form RA and your fee worksheet. But if you started at the beginning, you're going to have to revalidate everything. From there, it's just kind of like the regular packet. You'd make your changes, you make your updates, and you proceed to re-sign it and resubmit it. Okay, so let's remember a couple things. Document. Know where your records are stored on site. Understand how you got the numbers that you're reporting. Make sure you have all of these, the information that you filled out handy somewhere, and you can cross-reference it as needed. Report only what you need to report to us. Be aware of contaminants in your raw materials. I believe this was something that someone mentioned before, specific to lead. Lead can be non-lead EU, can be present in non-lead EU certified materials. This is a carryover from Walter. I haven't seen this, but I know that it does happen occasionally. PFAS chemicals can be a contaminant or a component of a chemical. Keep abreast of the changes in the TURA program. Take a look at new or added chemicals or improved SDSs. Check to see if there's lower reporting thresholds. Confirm that there's no frequent addition or additional PFAS or PFOA chemical that's been added. Be sure to submit your TURA report on time, and be sure to pay on time. I did remember one thing I'm going to go back to real quick for folks in regards to the fee worksheet. For those of you that are filing something that is in a chemical that's straddling two chemical categories, such as a PFAS compound and a C1, C4 halogenated compound, you would be billed for both of them on this fee worksheet. If you're reporting them, you are only supposed to be billed for one. The system isn't smart enough for us to change that, so you need to contact the program so that we can fix it for you, so you don't get billed for a chemical that you didn't need to be billed for. All right, back to the end. I've got some web links for MassDEP, the OTA folks, TURI, and the EPA. There's contact information for the TRI Data Processing Center, and there's the link to the questions and answers that we were all talking about earlier. And that is all I have. So I know there's going to be
there are some questions in the chat about the amend.
Okay.
So I'll refer to a few of them. Here's one. Is it possible to delete past transactions listed?
Yes and no. You are not able to delete them. So for instance, if you filed a report in error because you were reporting and you had one chemical and you realized the chemical you reported on was below threshold and you filed an error, and it's from this year, yes, you would have to contact the TURA program, give us an explanation. We can delete that transaction and have you replace it with a non-applicability form. It's pretty uncommon, but you yourself do not have the ability to delete a transaction.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, Under what circumstances are we legally required to amend a past transaction? What kind of errors? Over what time period, or is this optional? Well, I'll give a partial answer. So it's usually people want to choose to amend a transaction if they receive an error report from MassDEP about a possible reporting error. And in the past, we would manually revise the data ourselves in the database. But now we have a whole new system, and we are not able to do that anymore, and the filers need to make the amend the transactions themselves. So if you want to continue, Rebecca.
Yeah, I can also add on to that. For incomplete reports, so if you missed a chemical and we reach out to you and you don't amend your transaction to fix it, you will receive enforcement. And the enforcement would proceed to higher levels until you do fix it. So there are a couple of things. We always send pre-enforcement outreach that kind of gets you away from the, hey, you're going to get enforcement. It gives you time to fix it. So if we reach out to you with a problem in your transaction, you want to amend it. If you discover a problem in your transaction yourself, I would strongly encourage you to amend it. In the event you don't, and you get inspected by a regional inspector, they can compel you to fix 4 years of back reports. That can be costly and take a lot of time. So that's my answer for how far back and what to amend. If you find a mistake, you find a missing chemical, if you are looking at a report and you realize you missed a chemical last year, that's technically a self-disclosure violation. We do check to see why people amend reports. I actually receive a notification email every time somebody submits a transaction. So any transaction that comes in that's changed, we review, either myself or someone else in the TURA program, we review it to see what's changed. And is that change tied to something that we would have to send you a bill for or not? If you made a mistake and an error and you're correcting some numbers, great. Usually not something we send you a bill for. If you totally forgot a chemical and you need to add that in, that's something you would be billed for unless you hit the max fee amount.
Thank you. There's another question that Elizabeth Gugliotti asked, and I can answer that question. Can we also email MassDEP to avoid getting double billed for a chemical that is in 2 other categories, such as copper nitrate? Yes, yes, as you know, Liz, you can do that. You can email us about that, and the company would not be double billed for a chemical, a compound that's in 2 separate categories. And James Mahoney from Duraflow asked a question if we're going to be going over the sanitized version of the forms. Again, as Rebecca discussed, the sanitized version would be just to report all of your information, not including your trade secret claim in the sanitized version. Rebecca and I will be sending an email to trade secret filers within a week to notify how to report your trade secret data in the unsanitized version online for the first time. So we now have a protected system for trade secret data, and we will be sending an email to you within a week. But thank you.
Any other trade secret filers that have a question, if you need or want one of us to help you walk through a transaction when you're doing your first filing for trade secret, the unsanitized reports, that's totally fine. We're not going to cover that in this training because the majority of folks that doesn't apply to.
Right. That's right. In addition, Cindy Keegan asked a question: do we need to contact DEP for fees modification if reporting chemical and chemical compounds before submitting, or is it okay? Or is it okay to do after submitting? It's okay to do after submitting.
Yeah, you want to do it after submitting, but just so you can reference the transaction number if possible. And if you don't want to wait too long, so if you do have an answer, try to get that to us, or you do have that change, get it to us relatively quickly so we can flag it. Like a lot of things nowadays, billing is a lot more automated. So we need to make sure we pull yours out of a billing batch to ensure that we don't incorrectly bill you.
Any other questions?
I think Joan had a question that we didn't address. She said, even if we share it with someone in DEP, so I guess that was referring to the amend page. If
Oh,
you want to
yeah.
go back to that, Rebecca.
Or let me go back.
And Joan, if you could unmute yourself or type in the chat what you were referring to.
Yeah, I was just asking if you said that DEP can't help with amend anymore, but if they can, if you've shared with them.
We can help you if you've shared with us, but we physically can't do paper forms anymore. They don't. We had a data entry system where we could make a correction if there was a mistake. We no longer have that system. It's been retired. So the only thing we can do is fix the form online. So if you're having an issue with amend, that's 100% you can share with us, and we can work through and help you fix whatever it is that's a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Is there anyone else, or stop sharing again? I know that's a lot to digest. We'll get that presentation out to you because it is different than what Walter had. So should help. All right. There's nothing else. Lynn, you are up next, and hold on one second and I will share your presentation.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rebecca.
Not a problem. All right, Lynn, you should be all set.
I'll be providing a brief presentation of the 2023 TURA information release. Okay. Next slide. This map represents locations of the 2023 TURA filers by reported total use. It seems like we don't have, oh, I guess we do have the full slide, sorry. Okay, the 2007 core is a group of chemicals and sectors that were required for reporting in 2007 through 2023. The 2007 core group was adjusted for production. The data was normalized to account for changes in production over time. Production adjusted total use displays total use trends, including and not including a very large toxics user that ceased manufacturing in 2015. Adjusted for production from 2007 to 2023, the 2007 core group decreased total use by 69%. Next slide. Byproduct generation was reduced by 52%. Next slide. And on-site releases were reduced by 83%. Out of 1,500 chemicals listed under TURA, 128 were reported in 2023. The number of filers rose to a high of 728 in 1991 and 1992, gradually declined, and then rose again to 713 in 2001, largely due to the reporting of PBTs. The number of filers has since declined to 430 in 2023. The number of Form S's reported has followed a similar trend, decreasing from a high of 2,666 in 1994 to 1,467 in 2023. Next slide. As is shown here, which is raw reported data, chemical use decreased from 1.2 billion pounds in 1990 to 564 million pounds in 2023. Byproduct generation decreased from 127 million pounds in 1990 to 63 million pounds in 2023. Next slide. This chart demonstrates that the chemical manufacturing sector dominated chemical use in Massachusetts. This sector had the greatest percentage of filers at 19%, followed by the fabricated metal product manufacturing sector at 13%. You can see our 2023 TURA information release and previous year's information releases on our MassDEP TURA program website. Thanks.
Let me see, is there any more questions? Okay, it looks like one already answered that one about bills. Will the charts you just presented be in the TURA release?
Yes, they're all those were just a few charts from the data release is much bigger than that. That's a good question, Sandra. Thanks.
And that's available on your website now, right, Lynn?
Yes.
I'll see if I can go grab it real quick.
Yeah, I provided the link to it in the
gotcha. Okay.
Page. Yeah. Or the last page, I mean. Yeah, thanks.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah.
Got a little extra time.
Are we going to have a quiz?
Yes, the quiz, all of the PowerPoints will be converted and posted on mass.gov hopefully before the end of the week. And then we will send out links to those as well as some of the other handy links that you might need when you're filing. And for those of you that registered for this meeting, we will send you all the link to the quiz, hopefully either by the end of this week or the beginning of next. And once you have completed the quiz, I believe we usually give about a week or a couple days. And then we can start issuing everybody certificates. Anybody have anything else?
Give you another half an hour back of your time today.
So Sandra, the passing grade for the quiz is 80%. However, it will be open. You will have the material available to you. So you should be able to pass the quiz. Hopefully. Anybody else? All right, it looks like we'll let you guys go and you can enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. Bye.